Hello everyone, this is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was banished? And Hinata, Ino, Sakura, Temari and Kurenai followed him as he rose as the Emperor of the West Part 2. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. With everyone leaving the Colosseum to go back home to rest, enjoy the festival around town, or place bets on the tournament, the Easterners found themselves slowly walking back to their temporary abodes. Of all the fighters they sent in total, only 5 made it in the final section, and it was mostly due to luck that they didn't encounter any of the Western fighters. They were sure that the Western's taijutsu was at a much higher level, and could only hope the other 2 tournaments didn't contain such monsters either. They arrived at their compounds to see 2 Brotherhood members carrying a box between them. Before they asked, the box opened, revealing Zetsu chopped into pieces and of course, dead. We have warned you about attempting to spy and explore places you were forbidden to go. This will be your last warning. Do not attempt such a foolish action again, or you will all find yourselves expelled from our city. As for the main offender, you will be forced to give up something of value. You have no choice, announced one of the Brotherhood assassins before they melded into the shadows. They tried to find them only for them to see that they had truly disappeared without a trace. They all turned to the Odo village, expressing their fury about such a foolish act. Orochimaru was mad that Zetsu had been caught and killed. He would have to explain to Pain why their best spy was suddenly unavailable permanently. He had tried to use Karen to sense how strong these people were, but her ability was a bit useless as there was too much chakra in the city that she couldn't differentiate each person's level. Each village turned in for the night, planning on their next move. At the Imperial Palace, Naruto was having his favorite dinner, ramen. Ever since Tsuki and Ayame had moved to the west, he made sure they had a prime spot, away from all the eastern visitors to sell their food. He also had a Hiraishin kunai hanging at their shop to get there quickly. He ordered 5 ramens for himself before coming back at the palace, where Neji, Maru, and Itachi were waiting for him. Kisame was off drinking while their female companions minus Itachi were together discussing female subjects. So guys, how did it feel to see your relatives again? Asked Naruto. They all shrugged. The Imperial City was their home, and their family was each other. My little brother has fallen more than I thought. It was a mistake to let him live. If only Danzo had not interfered and stolen Shisui's eye, then this wouldn't have happened, murmured Itachi. It was weird seeing my uncle without saying anything, said Maru. It seems that my old clan now has a new heir, one who believes in the main house's deception, Neji told them. Nonetheless, it would be interesting to see how my old teammate is now. I hope Guy was able to hit some sense into him. Well, show them the fruits of your training, replied Naruto. Then they all began discussing what to do towards the end of the final tournament. The next day, all the audience showed up again to see the finals. The Easterners found their seats at the same place as usual. A few select people chose not to show up. Sasuke was grumbling about the injustice and how these trash didn't respect him and chose to stay back. He was still sore about not being able to use his Sharingan to copy others and was warned not to use it again. Soon, the 9 fighters all stood in the middle of the Colosseum. Welcome, everyone. We're here in the finals for the Taijutsu tournament. Here are the 9 competitors who have fought their way, earning a spot for today. Instead of the arena they fought in yesterday, our competitors today will fight in a much bigger arena. Only one fight will be going on this time, but that's okay. We can now pay attention to a specific fight and watch them bash their guts out. Kodo proceeded to do a ballerina spins while announcing this. Will fighters of the first round please come to the middle? Everybody else, please go to the side to wait your turn. Remember, follow the rules. Although I will be the referee for these matches to provide commentary, our esteemed proctors from yesterday will also be watching for any signs of cheating and will stop the match. The middle of the Colosseum grounds split open, and an arena that was bigger than the preliminaries proceeded to come out. Gonna skip nameless fights. The first match proceeded and after 15 minutes, Kenichi came out as the winner. He dodged his opponent's attacks with minimal movement before landing what he called strongest combo, a series of moves that knocked his opponent out. Then came Neji versus Lee. They stood at the center, each staring at one another. Lee had not quite gotten over his rival. No ex-rival. When Neji and Tenten suddenly disappeared, he was devastated. The last time they spoke to each other, hateful words were exchanged. Lee had believed that Naruto was the Kyuubi, and left storming away from his teammates. It took a fist and Guy's manly hug, causing the sunset of youth to be playing in the background, to convince Lee what was the truth. Before he could fully realize it, his teammates became missing nins. At first, he thought they were just on a mission. As days passed, he realized that he was now alone. Team Guy had disbanded, and Lee trained with Guy exclusively. Now, Lee was finally realizing one of his old dreams, fighting Neji on a public stage. Neji, my ex-rival. I have trained with Guy Sensei to the point that surely the gap between us has closed. Now, let me show you the power of youth and defeat you. Declared Lee. In the background, the elder Furinji still wearing his Geiru X mask chuckled. Here was another person who had a youthful spirit, like himself. All right, fighters ready? Asked Kodo. Then begin. Lee automatically opened 5 gates and rushed in to hit Neji. He was met with something he could never have imagined, though. Neji dodged his fist and jabbed Lee in the chest several times. Hachiman Tonko reversal, muttered Neji. At this attack, Lee felt all the gates he had opened suddenly close. Losing all chakra he accumulated at once, Lee stumbled onto the ground, shocked. He tried to open the gates again, but they wouldn't budge. He didn't even hear Kodo counting to 10, ending the match. He leapt back when he saw a hand in front him before noticing Neji was offering it to help him up. It's not permanent. You'll regain your ability to open gates at the end of the day, said Neji. Lee took his hand and stood up, a bit embarrassed that he had lost so badly and quickly. How has this gap between us widened so much? What am I missing? Asked Lee. Neji sighed. The gap between East and the West is huge. Either you learn to defend yourself or become prey, unlike the East. I was lucky to encounter some people who were able to guide me. As they walked off the stage to the side, Lee hesitated for a bit before apologizing to Neji about while asking where Tenten, Naruto, and Hinata was. Neji looked at Lee with his Byakugan for a bit, trying to see if Lee was lying before remembering Lee wasn't really a person to lie, as it was unyouthful to do so. Tenten is my wife now. The others are safe, replied Neji before leaving Lee alone to join up with Kenichi. Lee stood there a bit before crying tears and proclaiming how his old teammate's flames of youth was now in season and something about the lotus blooming, with Guy joining him as soon as he heard the news. Soon, the sunset of youth could be seen from their hugs. However, they didn't expect someone to join. Ho, proclaimed the elder, what a youthful display. Gary X, age 20, is also a teenager at the spring of youth. Allow me to join in your youthful hug. He grabbed both of them and hugged them, shocking Guy and Lee for a bit before welcoming him in. Oh no, the elders found some friends who share his view, said Kenichi while facepalming. Mew kissed him on the cheek to make him feel better. The other matches were pretty much steamrolls, with Ryu and Guy as the winners. Seeing as nobody was too injured or exhausted, the match with Guy and Luffy started after making sure Guy was okay with it. As Guy and Luffy faced each other, Guy could feel that Luffy would be a tough opponent. Soon, Kodo started the match, but nobody moved. Luffy-kun, I would appreciate if you go full power. I, with the flames of youth, will not hold back to win this. Hachiman Tonko Deroku Kaiman. Kai. 6th gate, declared Guy. Instantly, his skin color changed to blood red and a green aura was surrounding him. The eastern villagers were now relying on Guy to at least get them to the semifinals, showing they weren't all that weak. Anyone who could open gates was always people to be wary of back in the east. The west seemed interested in this. The Ryazanpaku members weren't exactly happy at this skill since just from observation itself it could rip muscles if not careful, but decided that the competitor might need it to make things interesting. As long as the damage didn't exceed a certain threshold, they could easily help him recover. Guy sprinted all over the arena, trying to confuse Luffy before attacking. However, each time he threw a fist, Luffy seemed to know where it was coming from and dodged it. Luffy tried to punch him a few times, but Guy managed to dodge it, if only barely. Interesting. So you've gained speed and power with your technique. I could beat you in this state, but it wouldn't be fun and it would take too long, said Luffy as he dodged a flying dynamic entry from Guy. Guy landed, interested at what Luffy was getting at. Luffy spread his legs in a horse stance before bending down on his knees. At once, his legs had what seemed to be pumps before it went back to normal. Luffy's chest expanded a little while his skin turned pink while steam seemed to be seeping out of his body. At once, the Westerners knew that this fight was over for Guy, while the Eastern people were still confused. Why was this man acting like a steam train? Did he open up gates too? Since his skin was pink. It seemed different, though. Gear second, declared Luffy. Be careful. My techniques all go up by at least one level now. Back at the Emperor's box, Naruto leaned forward. He had fought against Luffy when he used Gear second a few times with his own power, and the score was in Luffy's favor by 1. When he used Kurama's power with him, Luffy would use Gear fourth to fight him. That score, he was up by 1 in their duels, but it was getting harder to fight Luffy, who seemed to be always improving even faster than himself. Luffy would use Haoshoku Haki during the fight halt his movements, even if it was just for a microsecond. Not to mention even Kurama admitted that his punches hurt a lot. Back in the arena, Guy was cautiously trying to approach Luffy. He didn't know what Luffy was doing, but he didn't want to risk it. He had already seen that most of the Western fighters could easily handle them, and it was only thanks to using the gates that Guy was able to avoid complete humiliation. Gomu Gomu no, said Luffy as he his fist up, left hand forward, as if ready to snipe. Guy moved forward hoping to read the punch and duck under it and counterattack. Jet pistol. Guy barely even saw the punch before he went flying back. He managed to react fast enough put his hand in front of his face to block out some of the attack. He shook his head a bit before looking at the spot where Luffy was, only to see smoke. Jet rifle. A voice came from the side, punching Guy in the face from the side. Guy ended up on the pavement, facing up. His eyes opened wide as he saw Luffy already coming down with a punch and did a backflip, avoiding a punch to the gut. The ground shattered from the punch, making Guy feel a tinge of fear shiver down his spine. As he regained his breath and balance, he knew he couldn't afford to not use his move and dashed forward to Luffy. A Sakujaku, yelled Guy, fists blazing on fire. Luffy turned around to face him. Gomu Gomu no, said Luffy before his arms seemed to disappear in a blur. Jet. Suddenly, Guy was hammered with fists even faster than his attack, nullifying a Sakujaku. Gatling. Guy was sent flying, almost tumbling off the edge of the arena. He almost lost consciousness from the fierce attack. I have to open the 7th gate. Even if I can't fight in the semifinals after this, I can't lose this badly. Thought Guy. Dainana Kyomen. Kai. Yelled Guy, instantly covered in a blue aura instead of green. He quickly took the stance for his next attack as Luffy quickly charged towards him and hoped the seal barriers located around the Colosseum audience was enough to protect them. They had told them that even a Bijudama wouldn't dent it. Hirudora. Yelled Guy, hoping to land the attack when he noticed Luffy was already in front of him with his arm trailing behind him to where Luffy was standing moments ago. Luffy's arm was coated in a shiny black material, confusing Guy. Black, he thought. Gomu Gomu no Red Hawk, shouted Luffy as the arm was quickly coming back from its position and lighting on fire. Luffy's attack landed first, throwing Guy's attack off and missing Luffy by an inch. The attack flew into the barriers, where it was absorbed and protected the crowd. Fire came out behind Guy where the punch had landed. After a few seconds, Guy fell down to the ground, unconscious with at least second-degree burns. And we have a winner. Luffy Senshu has won this fight, announced Kodo. Luffy stopped steaming before smiling into the crowd with V signs. A stretcher quickly came to pick up Guy for healing. Guy managed to wake up before they were about to carry him away. I lost, huh, said Guy with a sigh. Luffy suddenly appeared next to him. You're interesting. That was a fun fight, laughed Luffy. Guy looked at him for a bit before giving his best nice guy pose before the pain kicked in again and passing out. The Eastern visitors were all in shock. Out of all the taijutsu users, everyone, even the other villages, admitted that Guy was probably the best one out of all of them, and he had just been taken out. How would the other tournaments go then? They could only hope for the best. As the tournament proceeded, Kenichi fought against Neji. It was a double KO. Kenichi dodged Neji's attack within the best of his ability, but Neji was fast enough to land a few hits and shut down some organs. Before Kenichi fell down, he shunted forward, hands up at mid-waist length before attacking with a move called Ryusui Mubiyoshi, a devastating attack that had no pattern at all. With broken ribs on one side and internal injuries on the other, both fell unconscious. They were quickly taken to the medics to heal up. Kenichi was shivering was Ketsuji casually mentioned that they would be upping his training. Luffy fought against Ryu in the final round. Ryu tried his hardest, and even with his mastery of the Satsui no Hado, Luffy was able to fight against him evenly using Gear Second. Ryu's mistake was trying to use his Raging Demon grapple, and when he did grab Luffy, Luffy countered within a second by wrapping his limbs around him to avoid being attacked by it. Unable to move, he was at the mercy of Luffy's attack. Gomu Gomu no, yelled Luffy as he threw his head back, stretching his neck. His forehead was suddenly covered in a shiny black material again. Kane. Ryu, still struggling, decided he only had one choice. He reared his head back and slammed it right into Luffy's forehead at the exact moment. A resounding thud could be heard from the impact. Both fighters staggered and Luffy let go of him. Quickly recovering, Ryu shot his leg forward and hit Luffy in the stomach. Luffy flew back and countered with a right hook towards Ryu's face. Ryu dodged it and launched a fist into Luffy's stomach, attempting to pull off the Shin Shoryuken. However, the first hit was suddenly nullified when Luffy inflated himself, turning himself into a balloon. The fist bounced off the stomach and forced Ryu back, leaving him open. Using these precious seconds, Luffy twisted his body in a spiral and jumped, face towards the crowd. He let go of his breath and shot forward to Ryu, spinning. His hands were coated in haki again and were on fire. Gomu Gomu no Hawk Storm! Shouted Luffy, throwing punches at such a high speed that many of the crowd had trouble trying to track it. Ryu did his best to block and dodge the attack, but in the end, he took too many attacks and was barely conscious. Luffy quickly ran up to Ryu with both hands trailing behind him. Gomu Gomu no Jet Bazooka! Luffy smashed with his hand right at Ryu's stomach, launching him out of the arena and into the wall. Kodo quickly declared Luffy the winner by ring out. While Nami was cheering her husband while drooling about the prize money, Luffy helped Ryu get up to see Aerith. Looks like I still have lots more of training, said Ryu when he woke up. Hee, it was still fun, laughed Luffy before he stretched over to Nami to grab his precious hat and Nami at the same time. Nami was shrieking as she was suddenly pulled over and smacked Luffy on the head before kissing him. Ryu just laughed at their interaction before laying back on the stretcher. He was planning to find his best friend Ken to do some more training and then perhaps go out on a dinner date with Chun-Li. And the winner of our taijutsu tournament is Monkey D. Luffy. Thanks for coming and I hope you'll enjoy our next tournament tomorrow. It's the weapons tournament. If you still need more information, you can find the rule book just outside the Coliseum. Have a good day everyone. Announced Kodo. As the audience streamed out of the Coliseum, the Easterners were still quite rooted to their seat. They had just witnessed the Westerners fight with each other and were deathly afraid. Although the Akatsuki members wouldn't admit, even they felt like Pain would surely lose to some of them. They suddenly all snapped out of the reverie when a balloon popped. They looked to see Yakiru and Kenpachi at the exit. Yakiru had the leftovers of her balloon still in her hand and giggling. Kenpachi merely scoffed before telling them to vacate the area for cleaning and head back to their temporary housings. As they trudged back, their fears about the West grew. Each village leaders was plotting different plans on their approach to the emperor. Tsunade quickly left for the hospital with Kurama's permission and guidance. She arrived there and quickly asked for Guy. I need to heal him. I have extensive knowledge of the gates, and have treated him before. She demanded. The nurse merely chuckled. Don't worry. He'll be fine. Dr. Ketsuji is currently treating his wounds. His reputation is quite famous. Still, I would prefer to be there to treat my own shinobi, said Tsunade. The nurse was about to reply when Kurama interrupted. It is within reason that the village leader would want to see her own shinobi safe. I will lead her to the patient. The nurse nodded before giving Tsunade a visitor's pass. She quickly walked with Kurama toward the operating room. I wouldn't worry about Guy. Dr. Ketsuji is known and feared as a doctor as scary as diseases and treatments, said Kurama. That's not a good thing, said Tsunade. My point being is that Ketsuji has been known to tackle cases that most people deemed hopeless. However, he does have another reputation, the medic demon, as most doctors who work with him end up crying in fear. Only Ma Kensai and Tony Chopper have been able to handle working with him, replied Kurama. Tsunade entered the room to see Guy being wheeled out by Ketsuji. Tsunade quickly did her medical jutsu to scan for injuries and was amazed that there was nothing wrong anymore. He just needs some rest. He is forbidden from doing anything that might strain his muscles, ordered Ketsuji sternly. Tsunade could only numbly nod as she pushed Guy back. Most of the Easterners were faced again with another shock that they apparently had the techniques to treat him faster than Tsunade, the legendary medic, could. At the Imperial Palace, Naruto and his council friends were dining with Koyuki's entourage. While eating, they were discussing trade agreements when Koyuki decided a change of pace was needed. So, how did it feel to see Konoha again? Asked Koyuki. I can see that the Tem and bitch haven't changed at all, chuckled Naruto. That's not true. They got worse, chuckled Kakashi. Sasuke still believes everything should lie at his feet. Sadly, that was true for some Uchihas, except they kept their attitude to more tolerable levels. Itachi snorted as he was eating his food before replying, that's an understatement, Kakashi. Try almost all the shinobis of my clan and some of the civilians. Naruto looked around to see what everybody else was doing. Tenten was talking with Yuffie, discussing various weapons tactics while Hanabi was talking with Hinata. Maru was talking with Jiraiya and reminiscing about Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage. Kisame was sparring against Kenpachi again in the training field. Well, as long as Akatsuki doesn't find out where Kisame and Itachi, it should be fine. He looked forward to tomorrow's tournament. So when's the heir going to come? Teased Koyuki. Naruto blushed fully at this before stuttering, don't joke around like that. Hinata's not even. He stopped when he felt someone pulling on his sleeve. He turned around to see Hinata blushing. Actually, I was going to tell you. I went to the doctor a week ago and found out that I'm pregnant, said Hinata. Naruto was so stunned that he had to sit down to process this news. Neji, on the other hand, was laughing. It was fated to be, considering how many times you two keep at it, snickered Neji. Suddenly, Tenten started to pull his cheeks. Eat that hurts, Tenten. Why are you doing this? It might help to know that I'm also pregnant, declared Tenten. Stunned, Neji decided he needed to follow Naruto's example and sit down. The council was silent for a bit before they all started to fight for the right to be the godparent. Koyuki merely chuckled before announcing that she had already reserved the position for godmother and Naruto and Hinata already agreed. The women sighed while the men continued to fight for the godfather. It should be me, right to San Fufufu, said Oki. Right you are, said Tu, Oki's right-hand man. No, it should be me. I'm the one who saved them, yelled Yusuke. Neji wasn't bother fighting for it as he had the honor of being the best man for Naruto, and also he was still in shock to even argue. No way. Boss should make me the godfather. I've been his student for the longest, yelled Maru. Now everyone knows since Koyuki's the godmother, I should get the right to be godfather since I'm marrying her, said Kakashi. Not only was he my student, I knew his father well, too. Godfather. Is that something to eat? Asked Luffy as he picked his nose. I want it. Nami automatically slapped his head for the comment. No, Luffy-kun, it means that if something happens to them, the child will be taken care by the godparents. I think I should apply for the position, too, said Itachi calmly. While everybody else on the council, both civilian and war, were fighting for the right of being the godfather, Tenten was already busy appointing her master Yuffie as godmother and was debating on who the godfather should be, leaning towards Kenichi. Neji and Naruto could only look at each other and chuckle. They were on their way to becoming fathers. Neji was happy because his child wouldn't have to be branded while Naruto was just happy he could be a father and start a family. The Easterners all got up to get ready for a new day. They had lost the first one but were hoping to bounce back. At this point, they were willing to have even the samurai to win for the pride of the East. Most of them filed into the Colosseum. Sasuke was being stubborn again and opted to head towards the training field, while Sakura was content on chasing him. Tsunade sighed at this. This act merely enforced her opinion that she made the right choice to not take Sakura as an apprentice. It was a shame, considering her chakra control was one of the highest she had seen, but with her attitude, it would reach nowhere. As the competitors went towards the arena while the others sat in the audience, Tsutomu and Orochimaru decided to join them in the cage box next to Koyuki. Tsunade wasn't pleased but couldn't do anything about it. At the middle of the arena, Kodo wasn't the announcer for this tournament. Instead, there was a man wearing a suit with the microphone. He had large square sunglasses, a red tie, and blonde hair that was combed back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our weapons only tournament. My name is Eric, and I'll be your announcer for this tournament. Here we have our toughest fighters all ready to battle for the grand prize of 100 million Ryo. The format will be the same as the Taijutsu tournament. Any attacks are allowed as long as the weapon is the source of the attack. That means no using hand signs for attacks. You'll have to wait for the next tournament for that. And don't worry about hitting anyone else, we have special seals provided from the Uzumaki clan placed at each arena that'll prevent anything harmful from spilling out. But forget about that, let's introduce our competitors today. If you look at our screen, you'll see our competitors today. Konoha only 3 members participating. It was 4 until one of them decided to open his mouth and dig himself into a grave, courtesy of Yoko Kurama. The other villagers who had lost a member were all in the Taijutsu tournament. Again, the Easterners decided to look for the Western competitors. They found their name in a nice straight line. Kagura, Rorano Azoro, Guts, Enzu, ID with an AKA as Ye Chunhua, Uzumaki Kenshin. At this last name, all the Easterners froze. They now knew that some of the Uzumakis made it to the West, but this name struck terror into them. A famous swordsman that even Tetsu was wary of. He had fought against a younger Mifune and won, annihilated an old generation of the 7 swordsmen of the mist by himself, and was known for his sword style, the hidden Mitsurugi Ryu. It was said to be so fast that if any shinobi attempted to make hand signs in front of him, they would find themselves without hands and legs. He was said to be the strongest swordsman in the Uzushiogakure, protecting the cage in that village. During the invasion against 3 main villages, the man took to the front lines and slaughtered many by himself, halting many invasion plans, earning his nickname Batosai, the Manslayer. Kiri, Kumo, and Iwa thought he was dead when Uzushiogakure finally fell. The older generation of the Konoha shinobis except Homura felt a different chill. What wasn't known was that Kenshin was actually Kushina's younger brother, making him Naruto's uncle. A select few of Konoha's top leaders had known Kenshin had survived, but he had agreed to hide for a while for the safety of his people. Homura was shaking in his shoes and pissing himself. He quickly excused himself to the bathroom. When Kushina died, he sent a request immediately to adopt Naruto. The reply came back telling him that Naruto died during the sealing process, and so Kenshin left for the west convinced he had nobody left at the east, not knowing it was a lie made by Danzo, Homura, and Kaharu. Sarutobi had never seen the letter and had no idea about it. Meanwhile, Tsunade could only hope she could convince the emperor, although the difficulty just shot up. He was known to be fiercely protective of family. They all hoped that it was just someone with the same name. As they scanned the Western competitors, their hearts sank. Long red hair in a ponytail, wearing a red kimono and white hakama, and his famous cross-shaped scar on his left cheek that he got from the invasion. His usual fierce face seemed to have transformed into something more calm and happy, though. Alright then. Let's see who's fighting whom. We have 42 competitors, this time, so again, 9 fights will take place right now. The second set will take place straight after, and the last 3 matches after that. A 30-minute break will take place after the first preliminaries are done. After that, we'll have 21 competitors, so someone will get a pass on that. Then, we'll be able to have 10 competitors fighting for glory and money the next day. Announced Eric. Hope we fight someone interesting, commented the white-haired man named Enzu while looking at his sword. The Easterners were thinking he was crazy when the man's black sword with a creepy red-looking eye suddenly responded. Yay. I wanna fight against Lamia. Show that bitch who's the better sword. Suddenly, the long black hair's sword seemed to give off some light that soon formed into a woman. Take that back. ID Nim will win against you. Now Lamia, said ID, trying to calm his sword down. No need to be so antagonized. Oh great. Talking swords now, thought Suigetsu. And I thought our swords were unique. Naruto took a look to see who his fighters were fighting against. Zoro had Killer Bee, Guts fighting Suigetsu using Kubikiribocho, they stole it from Zabuza's grave, and Meliodas fighting Akiri Nin wielding Shibuki. Gaara became worried when he saw Matsuri was fighting against Hidan. He wanted to jump down and advise her to give up, but couldn't. If he did, then he would be showing weakness in front of the other villages. Gripping his hand, he could only watch helplessly and hope the proctors could protect her. Sensei's gonna win this hands down, said Karui. Yay, Killer Bee is going to win so badly that'll the opponents will feel hot. Said Atsui. I wouldn't be so sure, said a voice. They turned around to see Yugito had decided to join them. What do you mean? Asked Darui. Surely a unique style like Bee will surprise them. You'll find out, commented Yugito as she sat next to Samui. How dull, said Darui. All these fights are going to take place at the same time, so I'm just gonna describe them in order. Just imagine it all taking place. Arena 1. Ha ha ha. Finally, I get to sacrifice someone for Jashin. Hidan laughed maniacally. Ketsuji was just staring at him while Matsuri was slightly scared. She took a deep breath as she readied her weapon, the rope dart. She had read about Hidan's abilities and hoped her technique was able to subdue him since Hidan was apparently immortal. As the fight started, Matsuri did her best to dodge and counterattack. Hidan got mad enough that he used brute strength and swung his weapon down. Matsuri jumped back, but rocks pelted her from the weapon's impact. She had to close her eyes and made a mistake. Hidan capitalized on it by quickly slashing up, getting a small cut on her cheek. Quickly licking the blood, Hidan performed his ritual. Haha, you lose, yelled Hidan as he stabbed his leg. Matsuri shrieked in pain as her leg suddenly had a hole in it. Seeing that she couldn't win, she gave up. Ketsuji nodded and declared Hidan the winner before telling him to stop. You can't stop me from sacrificing someone to Jashin. Die little girl, yelled Hidan as he was about to plunge his weapon into his heart. No, yelled Gaara as Orochimaru was just grinning. He was surprised to see that Koyuki wasn't even worried. The reason became very obvious a few seconds later. Hidan suddenly found himself dropping his weapon. He looked at his hands to see it dislocated. Matsuri screamed in pain as her hands were also dislocated. My apologies, madam. I had to stop this fool from killing you, said Ketsuji. Hidan was pissed. How dare this person stop him from sacrificing the girl to Jashin? He was next. I already have an idea of how your ability works. That's why I've already taken steps to stop it, said Ketsuji. Hidan quickly looked down to see that there were rocks missing around his circle that he had drawn on, therefore making the ritual ineffective. Hidan tried to hit him when he felt his world spin. He was suddenly thrown and forced into an extremely awkward position. Forced into an agonizing destruction hell, yelled Ketsuji. Hidan tried to move but found out that he couldn't even move a pinky. The only thing he could only do was scream obscenities, which was quickly silenced by a seal. I declare Hidan to be disqualified. Nobody will proceed in this match, Ketsuji said calmly. Gaara let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He would have to personally thank Ketsuji for saving Matsuri. Orochimaru was face-palming at Hidan's loss. Pain had even ordered Hidan to keep his temper and religious zeal in check, but obviously, Hidan hadn't bothered listening. Damn it Hidan, I'll kill you for costing us money, muttered Kakuza. Arena 4. Suigetsu was sweating like crazy. He had hope with Kubikiribocho he would frighten his others, but his opponent, who was wearing black armor, also had a sword just as big as his, if not bigger. Suigetsu had to put extra chakra into his muscles to wield his, but his opponent swung his weapon swiftly with no trouble at all. Suigetsu was soon disarmed by an upward slash and almost killed with a following downward slash had Guts not stopped 1 centimeter right before hitting his skin, showing his mastery of his blade. Give up, said Guts. Suigetsu numbly nodded and Guts lifted his blade and put it on his back. As he walked away, Suigetsu quickly ran in front of him and bowed to him on his knees, forehead hitting the floor. Teach me how to wield a sword, pleaded Suigetsu. Guts was confused for a second and decided to just keep walking away, with Suigetsu chasing him. Mei could only sigh. Guts also seemed to be a fine man, but seeing one of her shinobi chasing after someone was depressing. Arena 7. Dai Shrimp. As the Kiri Nin wielding Shibuki slashed down with all his might. Deidara was busy yelling about art being an explosion, cheering on the shinobi with Shibuki, hoping to see explosions. Meliodas sighed. I don't have time for this. I gotta check on Hawk to make sure he's not pigging out again. He swung upwards against the opposing sword with his, causing it to stop. Ha! You fell for it! Yelled the Kiri Nin. Explosions went off. However, it didn't go the way he expected. Instead of the explosions going off towards Meliodas, it came back at him instead, knocking him out. Full counter buddy, said Meliodas as he walked off. Arena 8. Haha, B8 my number. Be prepared to be hacked and sacked by me, Killer B Bakayaro Kanayaro. Rapped B. The Cloud Nins all had clouds over their head as B continued to make a fool out of himself. Zoro merely took out his 3 swords, putting one in his mouth. Santoryu. Haha, meet my Nanatoryu Bakayaro Kanayaro. Take a look cause now I'ma give you a taste of my hook, exclaimed B as he chucked his swords up and caught them all in his unique pose. Zoro lifted his eyebrow at this and was interested. B suddenly jumped and flipped forward to attack. The Raikage was looking with interest at this fight, considering it was his little brother that was fighting. He was amazed to see Zoro parrying B's fierce attack without a sweat. Even with all the acrobatic moves that would usually confuse someone, Zoro took it without blinking an eye. Then, Zoro attacked. Not bad. Santoryu. Kokuho. Otatsumaki. Zoro spun around in a circle before a cyclone was formed. B was sent flying away from this attack. He managed to land within the arena, but 2 of his swords were broken, and a cyclone of blades was still coming his way. Cursing, B quickly jumped above it to entering in it, spinning the opposite direction with a lot of chakra from his tailed beast. The tornado was neutralized, but he was breathing heavily. What's wrong? Is that all? Asked Zoro, grinning. Hee, not even close to doze. Rapped B as he threw 2 blades and charged forward, thinking Zoro wouldn't have any range attacks. Zoro just grinned, sending a shiver down his spine and abandoning that plan. Itoryu 360-pound Who. A beam of energy came flying out of Zoro's sword, breaking the 2 blades that B threw and continued forward until the end of the arena, where the seals absorbed the attack. What? Thought Darui. That was a powerful attack from his sword. They know how to do flying attacks without taking time to channel chakra. Mifune was interested at that attack. It didn't seem like a flying sword slash, but rather a cannonball. It's time I end this fight, stated Zoro. This might be overkill, but Zoro moved his arms before they left solid afterimages. He now had 3 arms on each side and 3 heads, carrying 9 blades. Hiki Kyutoryu. Asura. Really Zoro? Asked Wang Fei Hung, the proctor for this arena. Holy crap. What is that? Exclaimed Karui. Are those real? That's hot. Shouted Atsui. Crap. He has more swords than me with all my swords. Thought B. Told you guys, said Yugito. Zoro's one of the strongest swordsmen in the West. He can easily take on S-rank nins without too much trouble. I couldn't even beat him even with Matabe's powers. Hope you're ready, said Zoro as he charged forward. B tried to dodge but was too late. Megurin. Piercing drill, B took the attack head on and fell down, unconscious from the attack. Zoro was quickly declared the winner before B was taken in for treatment. Not bad. Maybe we can spar again someday if you can improve your sword style, commented Zoro as he sheathed his swords. He was supposed to walk to the waiting, viewing room for the West, but ended up walking the wrong way. Zoro. Wrong way. It's that way, yelled Wang Fei Hung, causing Zoro to blush. I knew that, said Zoro as he walked towards the direction Wang Fei Hung pointed. The only problem is that Zoro has a horrible sense of direction. He gets lost way too easily. Never let him lead, explained Yugito. Since the first round of the preliminaries was done, the board quickly randomized the second set. Naruto saw that Kenshin was fighting against Asuma, Enzu was fighting a samurai, ID was fighting Atsui, and Kagura was fighting some Iwa nin that was leering at her. That match was going to end fast. Orochimaru, thinking everyone was distracted, tried to release some of his snakes out. These snakes would bite someone and leave a cursed seal. With luck, he could control them and grab some valuable information, and if he was successful, perhaps bite Koyuki in one of the cages. However, just as soon as the snakes slithered away, weapons suddenly appeared above them out of nowhere and pierced their heads. The cages and Koyuki were surprised at this sudden movement until they saw the snakes that were pinned under. They glared at Orochimaru for attempting such a dastardly move. Soon, a tan man with white hair wearing a red button-up cloak, black pants and black shirt stepped out. Orochimaru, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave this area. You can't expect us to tolerate such behavior, especially within distance with other leaders. Comply or die, although I'm wishing for the latter, said the man. Suddenly, Orochimaru found himself staring at a dozen weapons pointed at him. Seeing no choice, he complied. Soon as he left, the swords disappeared. Thank you, Archer, said Koyuki. The other cages were a bit confused at this name. He certainly didn't seem like an archer with that many swords. Before they could question it, the match was starting, causing them to shelve that question away. Arena 2. Before we begin, this one must ask you a question, said Kenshin. Why did Konoha treat Naruto so badly? And why did the village lie to me about his death when this one sent a letter requesting to adopt him when I heard about the Kyuubi attack and Kushina's death? Tsunade whirled around to look at her advisor, who was looking at his feet. Tsunade never received any letters from Kenshin about Naruto, and she was sure that the Sandaime Hokage Sarutobi never did either. Most of the civilians in Konoha thought Naruto was the fox. Even some of our shinobis of our village thought the same. There was just too much fear and anger misplaced at Naruto. If it helps, my father and my clan never thought Naruto like that. As for a letter, I don't know anything about that, and I don't think my father received any letter either, replied Asuma as he got ready and prayed he would live. He didn't expect to be fighting someone so strong with a very reasonable grudge. He didn't want to make his wife a widow so soon. I see, replied Kenshin. It looks like this one was laying blame on the wrong part, that I was. Perhaps some roots needed to be examined. Kenshin's eyes suddenly turned fierce, sending chills in the Easterners. This was a face they all recognized, the face he used to fight, the face of the famous nickname he received, Batuse the Manslayer. Asuma gulped at this before attacking. Kenshin blocked the attack before quickly ending the match with a slash to the chest. Kurenai was gripping her hand so hard that it was bleeding as she saw her husband take a slash to the chest. However, it didn't seem like a mortal wound as Medix was already healing the damage. As Kenshin sheathed his blade, he left one last message for Asuma to deliver. Tell your Hokage I will certainly be looking for the ones responsible for denying my nephew his birthright and family. Arena 4. Enzu decided to showboat a bit. He slashed the ground, causing rocks to fly up. Before the samurai could do anything, Enzu hit the rocks with his blade with frightening speed, sending it all flying to the samurai and knocking him out. Arena 6. You're hot. Wanna go out with me? Said Atsui. You know I'm a guy, right? I heard you made the same mistake already, said ID with his eyes twitching and a vein threatening to break open on his forehead. What? Ah, man, that's not hot, said Atsui. The match started and ended quickly. ID would deny that he took his anger out on Atsui. Arena 9. Kagura used her fans to block and attack physically, winning the match. She wore a dancer's kimono, confusing her opponent on her style. She had pointed ears, red eyes, and beauty that didn't seem human. The last 3 matches, the only noticeable fighter was Mifune fighting against someone from Oto and quickly defeating him. A 30-minute break was issued to help heal anyone fighting in the next round. During that time, Suigetsu was still trying to get lessons off from Guts. All right folks, hope you enjoyed that, shouted Eric, because we're about to go into the second round of the preliminaries. Since one of the matches was declared null, nobody will get a pass. Instead, we'll have 10 matches to see who will enter the tournament. And here are our matchups. Kenshin vs. Samui. Kagura vs. Darui. Zoro vs. Yugao. Guts vs. Hiri Nin with Kabutowari. Enzu vs. Hiri Nin with Nuibari. Meliodas vs. Suna Nin with Staff. ID vs Oto Nin. Chojuro vs. Samurai. Mifune vs. Iwa Nin. Tamari vs. Omoi. Alright, well everyone head back to their respective areas so we can get this started. Tamari and Omoi, stay back for now, announced Eric. Arena 1. Kenshin, not wanting to hurt Samui too much, ended the match quickly, using the back of his blade to knock her unconscious. She put up a fight, but it wasn't enough. Arena 2. This is dull, said Darui. Kagura's eyes twitched a bit before taking a dancer's fan out and spreading them. Darui was interested at this action, but decided he needed to end this and win, otherwise, might blow a blood vessel for not having any of them reach the second day. He flicked his sword open and channeled chakra into his body, allowing the black lightning to surround him before channeling it to his sword. He dashed forward to slash, hoping to surprise. Kagura merely smiled before swinging her fan. Dance of blades. Crescent-shaped blades made of wind grew towards Darui, who blocked them with his sword. This move stopped him from continuing forward, though. As if it wasn't enough, Kagura kept creating even more of it. She's able to manipulate the wind that easily with a small fan. Gasped Tamari. She looked at her own fan, which was much bigger and was about chest height. Darui had to dodge or block Kagura's attack. Having enough of it, he decided it was time. Quickly leaping back while throwing a shuriken at Kagura to stop her for a second, he got into his stance. Rantan. Laser circus. He yelled as he stabbed forward. Usually, this move was done with hand signs and used his hands as a guiding attack. However, since this was a weapons tournament, he had practiced it using his sword, although not as accurate. Not bad. Try this for one then, said Kagura as she switched her attack and rapidly swung her fan. Wind suddenly picked and a strong gust was headed towards Darui. Darui was blown off of the ring, but his attack still flew towards Kagura. There was an explosion, and dust covered the arena. Darui shook his head to look to see if his attack was successful. What Tamari saw amazed her. As the dust cleared away, a wind barrier was surrounding Kagura, blocking all his attacks. Apapapa. The winner is Kagura, announced Apachai, who was the proctor for this match. Arena 3. Dance of the Crescent Moon. Yugao tried every trick she knew, but Zoro was able to easily deflect all her attacks. Soon, she overextended and found two blades crossed right under her head, almost cutting into her neck. Zoro was quickly declared the winner. Arena 4. Haha. My sword was meant to destroy any defense. I'll crush your sword, said the Kiri Nin wielding Kabutowari. Unfortunately, he grossly miscalculated the reach Guts Dragonslayer's sword had. The last thing he saw was the flat side of Guts' sword coming right into his face. Arena 5. Why can't I hit him? How can he see my attacks? They're near invisible, yelled another Kiri Nin. Enzu was having fun dodging and deflecting the Nuibari blade until his sword spoke. Stop playing around and just end this, otherwise I'll tell Irami your secret. You wouldn't dare, you stupid blade, yelled Enzu as he dodged another needle. I will if you don't stop this person from shooting needles into me, replied the blade. Enzu growled but complied. He swung his blade fast in an arc, slashing the air. The swing was too fast for the civilians and some of the shinobis to see. The Kiri Nin was confused until she saw a blade of wind coming right at her. She dodged it and tried to get back up to attack, but a blade was pointed right between her eyes. I think I win, little miss, said Enzu. The Kiri Nin could only growl and accept defeat. Arena 6. Meliodas decided to use parry on the Suna Nin's attack, confusing some of the Easterners why he didn't just use his full counter move. As he fought, he had a shirt promoting his drinks and made sure everyone saw it before finishing the fight. Arena 7. Die bitch. I said not to call me bitch. An indescribable veil of carnage descended between ID and the Oto Nin. After ID was done, the Oto Nin was unrecognizable. Arena 8. Chojuro wins. Arena 9. Mifune wins. Soon, Tamari and Omoi's fight was on. Juomoi aired all his worries, annoying Tamari. She finished it quickly with a wind jutsu and a smack to the head. After she was done, she looked at Kagura, challenging her with a stare. Kagura smiled at that. As the Easterners headed back to their current housings, the Raikage was in a horrible mood. None of his fighters had made it into the finals, not even his own brother Killer B. That Zoro swordsman was not normal, being able to somehow grow 4 extra arms and 2 extra heads. It made him look like a demon god. He thought about it and shivered. It made him look exactly like Asura from some of the temples he had seen. A god in human form fighting. What type of people was here? The other village leaders were not exactly pleased that they couldn't knock out even one of the Western fighters from making it to the second round. As they made it back, Gaara turned to Yugito, who happened to be accompanying them back. If possible, I want to personally thank the Proctor Ketsuji and the Emperor for protecting my shinobi, said Gaara. That girl's special to you, isn't she? Teased Yugito. It was lucky that Gaara had his sand armor on, otherwise, Yugito would have seen a full-on blush on Gaara's face. Regardless, Gaara continued, as if her statement never happened. I also wish to know if. Gaara looked around so see if anybody was listening in, especially Konoha, my brother in burden, Naruto, is here. When I found out about his banishment, I sent shinobis after him to offer him sanctuary in Suna, but they never found him. All they knew was that Naruto had gone over the wall to the west. Yugito studied Gaara's posture and face, if that's possible, and decided Gaara wasn't lying. She came close to him and gave him a hug. To anyone looking, it looked like a normal hug. However, Yugito whispered into Gaara's ears while dropping a piece of paper into his pocket, follow the instructions. Meet up at midnight, when everyone is asleep. Yugito left after the hug, confusing Gaara. However, he complied and didn't tell anyone. He really wanted to see Naruto again. Soon, midnight arrived, and everyone was asleep. What they didn't know was that the Brotherhood sprayed sleeping gas made by forcing everyone to fall asleep peacefully. Gaara was unaffected as he had followed the instructions and stood at a location the paper told him to. Soon, the Brotherhood members stepped out of the shadows and led Gaara to a section the Easterners themselves were forbidden to go in. There, he saw a sight that made him raise his eyebrow. They stopped in front of a ramen store with a bright neon sign saying Ichiraku Ramen. Gaara stepped in to see Chuki and Ayame getting ready to close when they saw him. Sorry, we're about to. Ah, Kage-sama, said Chuki. Did you want something? Although we're closing for tonight, we can still cook something up for you. Our usual midnight customer is about to arrive anyways. Midnight customer. It can't be, thought Gaara. Suddenly, a flash of yellow, and an old face Gaara hadn't seen for so long appeared. Naruto had definitely gotten taller than him, and the baby face that he had completely disappeared. Instead, a handsome chiseled face that had seen war replaced it, but the whiskers on his face was still recognizable. His hair had grown longer, but the unmistakable sun-kissed blonde spiky hair was there. He was wearing a white shirt and blue jeans, in civilian clothing. What's up, Gaara? Asked Naruto. Gaara chuckled at Naruto's nonchalant attitude. Still the same as ever, aren't you, Naruto? Never change, said Gaara as he took a seat. He ordered a shrimp ramen while Naruto ordered his usual. They ate in silence for a bit before Gaara decided to ask. So, you've been in the West all this time? Naruto nodded his head in confirmation. I see. If you ever miss the East, come to Suna. I can guarantee your safety if you ever feel like joining my forces, although I will need to convince your emperor. Perhaps you can arrange a meeting with him. Chuki and Ayame chuckled at that, confusing Gaara until Naruto's next sentence made his mouth drop. I am the Emperor of the Imperial West, Gaara. It would be hard for me to leave my people, he chuckled. Gaara stared at him for a bit before his usually stoic face started to crack up before laughing out loud. I see you didn't fulfill your dream of Hokage, but rather turned to a much bigger dream, said Gaara. After they finished eating, Gaara turned to Naruto with a serious face before bowing. I thank you for saving Matsuri, one of my shinobis and precious person. Is there anything I can do to repay this debt? He asked formally. Naruto waved his hand, dismissing it. Don't worry about it. I wasn't going to let anyone die by the infraction of the rules, except maybe Sasuke Tem. The two friends chatted for a while before finally separating, allowing Gaara time to sneak back into his bed. Before they parted, they made an agreement to discuss treaties. For the first time in ages, he managed to fall asleep thanks to a special seal tag that Naruto had given him. It would prevent Shukaku from taking over his body while he slept. The second day of the weapons tournament arrived, and everyone was excited to see what would be happening. Sasuke decided to show up for once, hoping to steal some moves with his Sharingan, even though he had been forbidden. "All right, ladies and gentlemen," announced Eric, "welcome to our second day of the weapons tournament. As you can see, the arena has been set up behind me. Will Kagura and Sabaku no Tamari please come up the stage?" Tamari quickly jumped onto the stage before flourishing her fan out, showing all 3 moons on her fan. She planned to go all out on this stage. She wondered where Kagura was when she heard someone shout to look up. There, she saw a huge feather floating down into the ground, and saw that Kagura had been riding on it. Back at the Emperor's box, Naruto and Hinata was chuckling. Kagura always did like to make dramatic entrances. Kagura soon jumped off her feather as she approached the ground, and shrank her feather before putting it back on the bun of her hair. "Are both fighters ready?" said Eric. They nodded in confirmation. "Then begin." They both got into fighting position ready to attack when Tamari decided to introduce herself first. "Kagura. You know my name is Tamari. However, I am sometimes also known as the Mistress of Wind back at my home. I can see now that this title cannot be given to me unless I defeat you." Kagura chuckled before replying, "Very well. Let's see who deserves the title, then." At once, they both swung their fans at full force. Their winds met in the middle of the arena and clashed for dominance. Wind Scythe Jutsu. Tamari swung again, hoping to break through. Kagura countered with Dance of Blades, nullifying the attack. Getting a bit desperate, she used her Sickle Weasel technique, hoping to trap Kagura in a tornado. Kagura dispelled it with a wave of her fan. Right afterward, Tamari followed up with Scythe Weasel Jutsu, her strongest technique. "Not bad. Try this then." Dance of the Dragon. Tornadoes suddenly formed from Kagura's fan and collided against Tamari's technique. Dust was blown everywhere, covering both fighters. As the dust cleared, Tamari was in the air already, swinging her fan down towards Kagura with a roar while Kagura moved her fan up to block. Tamari had expected Kagura to dodge instead of blocking, seeing how Kagura's fan shouldn't be able to stop her own. However, instead of hitting Kagura or even breaking through her fan, it was stopped upon impact. Tamari was shocked at this but didn't dwell on it. Instead, she used her strength to force it down, causing Kagura to leap back to avoid it. Upon landing, Tamari quickly opened her fan and used her wind jutsu and Kagura, hoping to blow off the ring. Kagura again dispelled the wind before it reached her. However, she didn't expect Tamari to throw her fan towards her right after her jutsu. Kagura grunted as the heavy fan hit her in the stomach and blew her off the arena. However, before she touched the ground, she quickly waved her fan towards the ground, producing a gust of wind. Kagura managed to reorient herself back to the arena. Upon landing, she was met with 10 kunais racing towards her. She quickly made a gust of wind and sent them up, scattering the attack. Tamari came low with a kunai and tried to slash her, but Kagura stopped the attack with her fan. After gritting their teeth in a deadlock, they broke apart. Tamari quickly opened a scroll and produced another battle fan she had as backup. As they looked each other in the eye, Kagura smirked. "It's time I end this," she said out loud. Tamari kept her cool and used another wind jutsu from her fan again. However, before the attack even reached the midway point, it died out. "What?" Tamari gasped. She was sure she had enough chakra. She attempted one more time but was met with the same result. "It's one of my abilities, aerokinesis," explained Kagura. "Many people can produce and utilize the wind. However, I'm not limited to that. I control the wind. If you want to utilize wind-based attacks against me, they're going to have to be much stronger than the ones you're doing now to make it beyond my control. I have to warn you, only a few people, such as the Emperor, can make wind attacks that are beyond of my control." Tamari gritted her teeth as she tried again and again, only to see it futile. Now she knew how Tenten felt during their first Chunin exam, where all her favorite attacks were useless. Seeing as wind-based attacks weren't going to work, she switched to using her fan as a blunt club. She struck as hard as she could while also using her personal taijutsu techniques she incorporated with her battle fan. In the end, Kagura ended the match by using Dance of Dragon and blew her off the arena. Before she slammed into the floor, Kagura made another gust of wind to rapidly slow down Tamari's descent to a gentle thump to the floor. "And we have a winner. Kagura of the West wins this match," roared Eric as the crowd cheered. As Tamari got up, she noticed her other battle fan in front of her. She looked up to see Kagura's face, slightly smirking. She always had a haughty face during the whole time, but now it seemed much softer now. Not too bad, complimented Kagura. You aren't like those stubborn people who try to use the same attacks even though it doesn't work. Tamari chuckled. I'll still find a way to use my wind jutsus to win. I can't have the title Mistress of the Wind if you're capable of defeating all my moves with a thought. If we have time, do you want to grab some food with me? I'd love to talk about wind techniques, especially your dances. Kagura laughed before agreeing to it. They shook hands, showing respect for one another as they both walked towards the waiting room, where a healer was waiting for them. Alright, next up is a matchup of the powerhouses. Zoro vs. Guts. Two fighters using similar destructive styles. I'm getting off the stage for this fight, announced Eric. The two swordsmen quickly drew their respective weapons before glaring at each other. Suigetsu was cheering for his idol in the background. The Easterners noticed that both fighters only had one eye. As soon as the announcer started the fight, they both dashed forward and swung their weapons with all their might. A resounding sound from the weapons meeting each other could be heard, followed by a shockwave that blew the audience back. After that, the only way to describe this fight was war. Both swordsmen would not give up, and both received serious damage that should have stopped them. Slash after slash, stabs after stab, the two fought with all their soul. The audience couldn't help but be mesmerized by this fight. Mifune and Hazsamaras were very impressed and hoped to come to some sort of treaty with the West to share sword techniques. Guts quickly used his armor to push himself even further, as well as donning the dog helmet. Usually, he would become unconscious and a berserk spirit would have replaced him, but ever since the Emperor helped him save Casca and even Griffith, he had learned to completely shut down the berserk spirit and gain full control of the armor. Even with this edge, though, they were still evenly matched. After what seemed like hours, but in reality only 40 minutes, both fighters were trying to regain their breath. Zoro had cuts all over him, and Guts' armor had many gashes that were mingled with his blood. They both got up one more time, and everyone knew this would be their last attack. Zoro had used his 9-sword style to its fullest effect, but couldn't maintain it anymore. Guts' helmet was receding back after constant use. Both looked at each other before charging for the last time. Zoro was spinning his two swords like a windmill in front of him while Guts had his sword up high. Raahhhhh. Guts roared as he swung his blade down. Santoryu Ugi. Sanzen Sakai. Zoro called out. A bright flash filled the arena, blinding the audience for a second. They saw that Zoro and Guts had switched places now, backs facing against each other. Silence could be seen all around as the audience held their breath. Zoro stumbled a bit, causing the audience to gasp as he spat out blood. It seemed like Guts was the winner when blood suddenly spurted out his chest. Guts fell down backward, bleeding. And the winner is Roronoa Zoro. Can we get some medics here? They're bleeding heavily, said Eric. Healers quickly climbed on stage and carried both of them away to heal. Nice fight, said Zoro to Guts. Guts chuckled before replying, I'll win next time. The audience was cheering for such a fight, while the Easterners were seriously considering their decision about attending the tournaments. Here, they were repeatedly shown that they were in way over their head. They had heard about the West in the past, and how they were warned about them. Many didn't believe in such old legends or believed themselves to be superior. Sasuke was mad that even with the Sharingan, he couldn't seem to copy the West style. He could barely see Zoro's slashes, and even if he could copy Guts, he didn't have the muscle for it. He had to find something from the West that would let him kill his brother. Konoha had nothing to offer besides some civilian women who was related to the civilian council throwing themselves at him. They were too weak for him, though, and desired strong women to carry his strong genes. He looked at Orochimaru. Perhaps a Sannin would help him progress further. Konoha no longer had use for him anymore. The next one was a quick match. Meliodas and Kenshin were evenly matched in speed and techniques. After a few minutes of slashing, Meliodas announced his intent to give up, as he didn't feel like it anymore. He said he felt his time was more productive in selling his drinks while making sure Hawk wasn't pigging out again. Everyone face faulted at that reasoning, but they let Kenshin proceed to the next round. Our next match is Enzu vs. Mifune, announced Eric. Will experience help Mifune conquer his opponent, or will Enzu's youth carry him through? Let's find out now. Enzu and Mifune drew their swords out. Mifune was interested in Enzu's techniques, as he didn't seem to be muscular as Zoro or Guts. It also helped that his sword seemed to be talking to him like a partner, even if they insulted each other. May our blades guide each other, said Mifune as he respectfully bowed towards Enzu. And may our swords never waver, replied Enzu, bowing down before he got back up, scratching his face. I hope that was respectful enough. I'm not too good with words. Passable, answered Mifune as he got into his stance, his sword in his sheath, denoting he was a master of Iaido. Careful, Enzu. This old man's no joke, warned his black sword. Soon, Mifune slashed faster than most people could see. Even Itachi still had trouble seeing the slash with their Sharingan. However, Enzu was guided by instinct and dodged it. Damn, that's fast, commented Enzu as he dodged another strike from Mifune before he slashed the air again. Mifune's eyes grew wide as he saw the slash and promptly dodged to the left. A bit of his hair was cut from the slash. Such mastery of the blade at such a young age, mused Mifune. If this boy was born in the East, he would no doubt be my successor and probably taken over for me already. I'm getting too old for this. He had no more time for such thoughts as Enzu engaged him in sword range. Mifune was forced out of his Iaido style when Enzu wouldn't allow him time to sheath his blade after an attack. This fight wasn't like Zoro and Guts, but it had a rather more refined style. Those two were all about strength, and these two were finesse. It was a beautiful sight to witness, but it had to end. Mifune channeled his chakra into his sword while backing off to regain some distance for Ei. He then swung with all his might and speed towards Enzu. His target, Enzu's sword. He hoped to break it or at least disarm Enzu. With that in mind, Mifune struck at Enzu's sword. Instead of trying to dodge or block, however, Enzu slashed downwards to meet the sword head-on instead. A loud noise could be heard, and a blade fell to pieces. It was Mifune's sword that broke. Mifune looked dazed, seeing that his blade that was infused with chakra, along with a technique he developed to destroy blades, was broken. Enzu's blade was not amused. Yo wow, howled the blade. What the hell, Enzu? I may be indestructible, but that doesn't mean I can't feel pain. Indestructible, thought Sasuke. I need that blade. I could kill my brother with it. He plotted on how to liberate the blade to its rightful owner, not knowing the blade would never choose him. Mifune took a glance at his blade before announcing his forfeit. The crowd applauded on the match while Enzu and Mifune shook hands. Such skills at a young age, commented Mifune. If you have time, come over to my lands and meet my fellow samurais. We could always learn from someone like you. Enzu chuckled before scratching his cheek. It would be nice to travel to your place, but I don't think Irami would allow me to. Our fifth match is ID vs. Chojuro. Begin when ready, announced Eric. Hey Chojuro. Don't lose, otherwise you'll embarrass our Mizukage, taunted Suigetsu. Chojuro blushed at this, but his face seemed to earn a great deal of concentration after that. As soon as he heard the fight begin, he dashed forward towards ID with his weapon Haramakare in hammer form. He swung it as hard as he could down against his opponent. A huge dust cloud formed on impact, covering the fighters. Damn, I was just teasing him. Didn't think he'd go all out like that. Oh well, shows that Kiri isn't as weak as the West, said Suigetsu. The dust cleared, and the Easterners were shocked to see ID block the hammer with his sword without struggling too much. Not bad, complimented ID before swinging his sword, causing Chojuro to back off. Chojuro grunted before trying out various techniques he had learned with his sword. They were all easily parried by ID, some looked like it was impossible to even consider parrying. Chojuro was sweating heavily while ID didn't even look winded. He took a glance at the Mizukage as if gathering confidence from her. He took a deep breath before deciding to put everything into this match. He wanted to conserve the chakra he had stored in Haramakare for the further matches, but he couldn't afford to do that with this opponent. Full chakra release, Chojuro breathed out. His sword elongated and sharpened, and water streams were surrounding him, forming a vortex. Here I come. Piercing stream. Original move. It was impressive. Chojuro was surrounded by water violently streaming around him like a barrier while his sword was headed towards ID. This was a move that could not simply be parried easily. ID seemed to have the same thought. If that's so. Blood River Sword. First right large river, said ID as he got into position. His right hand held the sword raised at head level while his left hand had two fingers on his blade as if guiding it. His body shifted that his left side of the body was in front as he started forward. Such a light attack won't stop me, yelled Chojuro as he got nearer towards ID. He was confident until he heard the next line. Second right overflowing. Suddenly, a huge torrential wind followed ID as he slashed forward, dispelling Chojuro's attack. Before he could react, he heard another chilling line. Third right colliding wave. Before Chojuro knew what was happening, he was sent spinning away from ID. ID had followed up with an upper slash, using all the momentum he had garnered, and cleanly knocked Chojuro away. Chojuro landed face first on the floor, followed by his weapon beside him. He was unconscious, thus declaring ID the winner. The Mizukage had her fist clenched when she saw Chojuro defeated, but at the same time, she felt proud for her shinobi. Chojuro always had confidence issues, but to use this move without chopping someone to gain more confidence was surprising since he executed it very well. Kagura fought against Zoro in the next match. It was not a bloodthirsty match like before, but Zoro managed to win when he disarmed Kagura and pointed his blades at her. Kagura pouted but accepted defeat. Even if she could use her other move, Dance of the Dead, Zoro would have easily cut through all of them without any problem. Afterward, it was Enzu vs ID. In reality, it was their swords that were fighting each other. Both always insulted each other since both could talk and tried to brag who was better. In the end, they shut up when Hisako asked if they wanted to be silenced permanently. Both blades collided against each other. Enzu decided Stream Lightning Chakra in his attacks ever since he learned it from one of his mentor, Edermask. ID countered with a variety of techniques, including Phoenix Slash. Sasuke's jealousy grew as he couldn't seem to copy Enzu's wind slash attack since it used no chakra at all or its sword techniques. After 30 minutes of swordplay, Enzu was almost out of breath while ID was still fine, although sweating heavily. Come on, Enzu. We can't lose to them. I can't bear hearing Lamia bragging, said Enzu's sword. Easy for you to say. You're not the one fighting ID, replied Enzu. He's countered all my techniques and still has some for backup. Not really, thought ID, some of these moves I don't want to use since they strain my heart, while others' techniques don't use my sword, disqualifying those. Ever since he trained with Edermask and other swordsmen, his growth has been monstrous. Enzu tried a last-ditch attack, but ID blocked. Enzu decided to give up as he couldn't really move anymore. As they got off the stage, Enzu was confronted by his red-haired female friend Uzumaki Irami. Let me heal you, said Irami. You all right? You're never this nice, asked Enzu before receiving a punch to the head from her. Idiot. Can't you just be thankful? What happened to? I'll get stronger to protect you, asked Irami before healing him while blushing. Hey, you heard that, said Enzu while blushing before deciding to become silent. Edermask chuckled at this before complimenting him on a good fight. ID later announced that he didn't want to fight in the finals, stating that he didn't feel like going against monsters. The true reason was he couldn't afford to strain himself too much again, otherwise, his heartbeat might go out of control. Alright, this battle is something to get heated up. Strength versus speed. Zoro versus Kenshin. It's the final match. The crowds were cheering when those two stepped up to the arena. When the fight started, both just looked at each other. Soon, a single leaf came floating down in between them. In flash, they both struck at each other, with the leaf caught in the middle of their weapons and annihilated into pieces. Konoha shinobis shivered at that. Hopefully, that was merely a coincidence and not a warning. If they thought the fight with Zoro and Guts was impressive, then this one left them speechless. Kenshin fought with blazing speed, but Zoro was able to block some of them and counter with destructive strength. He's improved a lot, muttered Tsunade, remembering Kenshin's swordsmanship during her youth. Iwa was shivering at the thought of another Uzumaki coming for vengeance. Hidden Mitsurugiryu. Kuzuriasen. At once, 8 slashes and a hilt stab came towards Zoro, who blocked it with his Asura blade dance. What? I couldn't see which slash came first. shouted Sasuke. I should be able to tell with my Sharingan. Most of the Easterners were also in similar shock. Mifune felt lucky he had lost. He wanted to challenge Kenshin again, but seeing how Kenshin had improved, even more, it would be pointless as he would lose badly. They fought at close range, never backing up unless their techniques required them to. 1080-pound cannon. A wind blast, much stronger than the one Zoro used against B, came flying towards Kenshin. Instead of trying to dodge, Kenshin rose his blade to the sky before slamming his blade to the ground. Hidden Mitsuraguryu. Doryusen. Chunks of the ground flew right into the wind blast, blocking Zoro's attack. Let's end this, Zoro-san, said Kenshin as he got into an Iaido position. Come on then, roared Zoro as he sheathed his swords. He took the one with the white scabbard out of his belt, holding it perpendicular to the ground, with the sheath behind his leg. He held the sheath with his left hand near the guard and the right hand on the hilt. Kenshin ran forward while Zoro maintained his horse stance. Hidden Mitsuryugi Ryu. Itoryu Ei. A violent clash and a flash of light could be heard. As soon as the light was gone, they could tell that both fighters had their backs facing each other. Amakakuru no Harameki. Zoro's chest was cut open, blood spilling out. Zoro wavered and his body was falling towards the ground. The audience thought that it was over, that Kenshin had won when Zoro took a step forward to regain balance. Zoro's sword was slowly being resheathed, even with such grievous injuries. Shi Sun Sun. Kenshin's chest suddenly has a huge sword wound bursting out too. Both took serious sword wounds during that clash. As both fighters tried to regain their breath, the audience, especially the Easterners, were wondering what the hell happened. What the hell? That was too fast even for me to catch. Shouted A. They slashed each other, but how? Asked Gaara. From the shadow, a shinobi suddenly appeared, scaring the cages a bit. The shinobi went to Koyuki, whispering in her ears before leaving. Koyuki chuckled before deciding to explain the rest of them what she had just heard. Usually, Kenshin's ultimate technique is one that is extremely deadly. If you decide to block his attack, you have to do it in a special way or have a special sword. Otherwise, his sword will break your sword and slash yours. Even then, if you do parry it, something happens. I won't explain, but just know that even if you avoid the fangs of the flying heavenly dragon, the gusting winds will strip your freedom of movement, and the claws will rip you apart. The cages shivered at this description before Tsunade asked the big question, then what did Zoro do? Fufu, allow me to explain, a voice rang out. They all looked to see a woman with startling light blue eye and black hair, along with a nicely shaped bust and waist. Nico Robin. Nice to see you're doing well, said Koyuki. She bowed in respect before explaining. My husband, Zoro, decided instead of blocking or striking at Kenshin's attack, he took it head on. He minimized the amount of damage he could take by leaning back when he felt the sword cut through his chest, so it wouldn't completely cut through him. He then slashed at Kenshin instead. That's suicidal, shouted Mei. Indeed. That's my husband for you. However, he truly has the most incredible endurance that he judged that he could risk it and slash back, replied Robin. Back at the arena, both swordsmen were struggling to stand up after they had both fell. In the end, Eric announced that the first one to stand up and declare himself the winner would win, seeing as both fighters couldn't even attack. In the end, Zoro was the one who managed to stand up and declare that statement, making him the winner. As the crowd cleared out, the Easterners were really starting to doubt their chances. Some thought they still had a chance, but they were few in between. While they went back to their respective homes, Orochimaru and Tsutomu were already drawing out plans to somehow conquer the West. They theorized that these people that had shown them up were trained professionals and that most of their soldiers were actually weak. They hoped to defeat those actually that strong with overwhelming numbers, suicide attacks, and/or assassinations. As the cages left, Mei was the last one to leave. However, before she could leave, one of the Brotherhood members stopped her and handed her a piece of paper. Our Emperor would like to invite you and one person of your choice to dinner. If you accept, please follow the instructions on this paper. Tell nobody of this encounter, said the messenger before disappearing into the shadows. Mei quickly put the note in her left chest underneath her clothes. She couldn't afford to not accept this chance to speak with the Emperor. She automatically chose Ao as her partner for this dinner. As night descended upon them, and the hour for the meeting time drawing near, May excused herself while dragging Ao on the pretense of re-educating him on his words. Ao was crying crocodile tears while the other Kiri ninjas either winced, like Chojuro, or laughed, like Suigetsu. After dragging him away did she reveal that she had an invite to see the emperor. Did Ao feel better? They walked to the location they were told to go and wait. Suddenly, hands gripped on them and pulled them into the shadows. They struggled at first, but the Brotherhood messengers told them to stop and allow them to blindfold them before meeting with the emperor. May and Ao agreed but were surprised they knew about Ao's Byakugan when they pulled out a specialized seal and put it on his eye patch. As soon as they were blindfolded, they felt a hand on their shoulder before they were teleported. At first, they felt a bit nauseous but soon got over it. When they were given permission, they took their blindfolds off and were quite shocked to see that the emperor was actually Uzumaki Naruto. He had his emperor clothing on but opted not to put on his mask. Right next to him was Uchiha, blowing on his bubble pipes again. May and Ao quickly bowed down in respect in front of the emperor. Please, stand up, said Naruto. Uchiha has put a good word for you, so my council and I have decided to allow Kiri a chance to talk. May was thanking whatever deity that she had never treated Uchiha badly. She remembered many shinobis back in the past had hated Uchiha for being a Jinchuriki and saw him as a demon. While they were discussing trades and possible treaties, Naruto had made a clone have a private talk. Itachi. Are you sure about this? Asked Naruto. Yes, Naruto, said Itachi, I have earned a spot in that. I will not back out now for safety. I plan to let them all know who they're dealing with, and I also plan to reveal those secrets that have remained hidden for so long. It was finally the last tournament. Everyone was looking forward to this one. The Easterners saw it as their last chance to bring glory back to them since they were allowed full use of their skills. Some of the villages forgot that the same limitation was the same as the West, though. The Easterners quickly filed into the Colosseum. However, one person was running late, since she had to use the bathroom as well as take care of some of her more personal matters. Crap, I'm late. Need to catch up, panted Hana Inazaka. She quickly took the path towards the Colosseum at her highest speed without paying attention. She crashed into someone right as she jumped over a cart. However, only she bounced back, as the person stood there like a rock. Rubbing her nose in embarrassment and indignity, she looked up and was about to yell when she saw who she had run into and froze. Her instincts were screaming at her, telling her that this handsome, tall, slender man was an alpha. His most noticeable characteristics were his long white hair, a moon crescent on his forehead, golden eyes, and a powerful aura. Her primal nature was demanding her offer her body to this man and mate with this alpha right now. Her loins were starting to become wet. Her logical side was almost agreeing with her instincts, the only difference was that the logical side was telling her to find a room instead. She sat there frozen, slightly panting at him. The man was just staring at her for a bit, with a regal aura. Then, a voice rang out. Lord Sesshomaru. Wait for me. The man named Sesshomaru turned around to greet a little girl wearing a kimono and a small green imp wearing servant clothing and carrying a staff with two deformed head for its top. Rin, Jaken, come. We need to get to the Colosseum, or we will be late to the matches, ordered Sesshomaru, ignoring Hana for the moment. He could smell the woman before him was in heat, and while it would be interesting to take her, he had far more important tasks. He quickly picked up Rin and ran ahead. Jaken only managed to jump onto the fur trailing behind him. At first, Hana thought it was part of his clothes but then noticed that it seemed alive and that it was actually attached to the man himself. Hana raised her hand in futility, wanting to stop Sesshomaru from leaving. She was left alone, trying to deal with the wetness that had grown in her loins. She was tempted to just head back and give herself some private time to get rid of this heat but then remembered the matches were going to start. As she started to get up, a gust of wind appeared in front of her, and Kagura stepped out, looking quite angry. Listen, bitch, I've been trying to chase Sesshomaru down to become his wife for a long time now. I won't let some random girl get in my way. Stay out of the way, or become our concubine, Kagura said angrily. She was not expecting a reply and was surprised when Hana said yes. Hana blushed and cursed her automatic reply. That man was really wreaking havoc in her instincts. Kagura stared at her for a while before she started laughing. Well, then. I wasn't expecting such a straightforward answer, but I supposed you to what he is and what your clan is related to, it's to be expected. Come, I'll give you a ride to the Colosseum, chuckled Kagura as she plucked a feather from her hair bun and tossed it in front of her. The feather grew in size, allowing both of them to step on it and float towards the Colosseum. The competitors quickly entered to the center of the arena as usual. For the Eastern group, some were excited to fight such strong opponents. Some had resigned to already losing. And in the last group, some still foolishly believed the West had no chance. Sasuke was obviously in this group, along with his personal cheerleader, fangirl Sakura. Soon, a portly man with white hair and white mustache and a green-haired slender man stepped forward. Hello, fighters. I'm Professor Port, and this is my colleague Professor Oobleck. Today, we'll be doing this a little differently from the other two tournaments, said the portly man. Indeed. Instead of the usual round elimination, we'll be head straight for the tournament format. If you look at the screen, you'll see we have two sides, East side, and West side. Your name should be on there, and you can check who you're fighting against right now and whoever after, thus giving you more time. Said the man named Oobleck. He spoke so fast that his words towards the end blurred in the sentence, and he took another sip of his coffee. As my esteemed colleague was saying, we'll be hosting the east side of the tournament first. After that, the west side will go next. You may notice that for both sides, a few fighters will fight one less battle while others may have an extra one. Do not worry, we will allow you sufficient time to recover. Since there are 44 fighters, that mean 22 fighters on each side, ho ho. Why, I remember in my younger days, I took my trusty axe and Port started to wander off topic and preach about his younger life, and something to do with cabbages. Eric had to chuck a brick at Port to get him back on topic. Ahem. Sorry about that. This time, instead of having 9 fights in the arena at once, we will be letting the audience choose which fight to watch on many different screens. You lot will be stepping onto a platform which will send you to another place, where you can use all your techniques without worry. It'll be a large area for you to fight. However, we can only have 6 arenas for you to fight in. That means this might take a little longer than usual, but no worries. We have refreshments, and each match will get their personal announcer to commentate. Announced Port. Yes, indeed. You've already met 2 of them earlier, and Port and I will also be doing commentary. Allow us to introduce to you the rest of them, shouted Oobleck, before dashing off to the side doors to open it. 2 more people walked in to introduce themselves. The man with spiky black hair, sharp sunglasses, white dress shirt and black pants introduced himself as Radim. His mic was slightly shaped like a totem. The other one was a curvy female announcer wearing a Playboy bunny costume, stockings, and a headband that made it look like she had horns, like a dragon. Her clothing, of course, attracted a lot of attention from the fighters and the audience, but she looked like she didn't really care and loved the attention. A special tattoo could be seen on her left butt cheek. Hello, everyone. I'm Tatsuko, representing the dragon of the 12 zodiac referees. I was chosen to be the announcer for these fights, announced the female. In any case, please take a look at the tournament chart, said Radim. Once you've found your place, go ahead to the waiting area. The first 6 matches will start shortly, and we will call you up towards the middle to be sent toward the arenas. After that is the West Side's matches, and then we'll have all the seeded matches done right after. Quote. The Easterners were almost afraid to look at the tournament chart. They quickly located the West's fighters and their names, which was scattered all over the chart so they wouldn't fight each other too fast. As if to mock them further, their names were highlighted for everyone to see. Yusuke Urameshi, Sesshomaru, Son Goku, Frankenstein, Sora, Natsu Dragneel. However, the last name to appear on the list was what shocked Konoha, Oto, and Akatsuki. Sasuke was seething in rage at the name. Itachi Uchiha. He's alive, yelled Deidara. I'll kill him, roared Sasuke as he looked to where the Western competitors were sitting. There, sitting in the competitor's box, was Itachi, sipping on some green tea and snacking on some Pocky. The rest of the Easterners took a closer look. They noticed he seemed more relaxed, healthier, and happier. Like a great burden had been lifted off him. Meanwhile, in the West's competitor's box, You sure it's a good idea to use your real name? Asked Yusuke. You could have easily just put a different name and change your looks. There is no point in hiding anymore, replied Itachi. They already know Neji is here. It won't take long until they figure out who else is here. Doesn't matter. We'll help if they try to gang up on you. I'm looking forward to a good fight, said the spiky hair man wearing an orange gi named Goku. I'm all fired up, yelled out Natsu, the man with a white scarf and salmon-colored hair. This will be fun, said the teenager with spiky brown hair named Sora. He bumped fists with Natsu. Sesomaru and Frankenstein, a man wearing a butler suit and had long blonde hair, decided to just remain silent. The first 6 matches from the east side of the tournament were suddenly highlighted, allowing everyone to see who was going to fight first. Arena 1. Hiri Junin vs Iwa Junin. Arena 2. Shino vs Suzembaki. Yes. Time to show those tree huggers who's truly above the food chain, thought Suzembaki. Shino merely shifted his coat a bit. Arena 3. Sesshomaru vs Iwa. Lord Sesshomaru will win, cried out Rin. Sitting at her box was Jaken, Inuyasha, Kikyo, Kagome, Kagura, and surprisingly Hana. Taking advantage of this isolated area, Hana asked Kagura, were you serious about that? I didn't think you support polygamy. Well, I wouldn't want to, Kagura said thoughtfully, but I wouldn't be able to handle him alone if he decides to mate. He is a Daiyukai, great demon, like Yusuke-sama. I'm surprised he only has one human wife, although Yusuke-sama does have human blood in him. Most likely, his wife is enough for him, and I can't blame him. Also, his younger half-brother Inuyasha is married to 2 people. Twins in fact. They're right over there. She pointed to Kikyo and Kagome, who sat on either side of Inuyasha. Hana felt slightly better at this. Strong alphas would usually have multiple mates who desired his seed. However, she had one last question. Then, who is Rin? Is she his real daughter? Kagura shook her head before explaining how Sesshomaru met Rin, who was all alone in a village before deciding to take her with him. The girl somehow wormed her way into his heart and looked after her as his own daughter. Arena 4 Sora vs Sai. Looks like I'm up first, said Sora. Boo. I want to fight now, replied Natsu, pouting before wishing Sora good luck. Arena 5 Tenzo vs Suna Junin. Arena 6 Akatsuchi vs Suna Junin. A.N. These fights are the one who has to fight an extra match, and will be fighting against ones in a seated position. If it gets confusing, I'm going to try to put an image of the tournament chart to let you understand how it works. Alright. Will the fighters whose names have been highlighted please come towards the center of the arena? Please go to your assigned announcer. Each announcer has already been appointed to an arena number, called out Radim. Raya Zanpaku members will still be your proctors for your match, so please do obey them when they say stop. When the fighters stood in front of their assigned referee and announcer, the Easterners were slightly confused as how they were going to fight when the ground beneath them suddenly glowed. Before they knew it, they disappeared from the Colosseum. As they slowly opened their eyes, they suddenly found themselves in separate arenas that were big enough for long-distance fights. There was a lake to supply water for any water-type jutsu, and trees for cover if needed. All in all, it would be a likely scenario to have a fight in real life. A.N. Skipping fights with no-name characters. Arena 1. Hiri Junin wins. Arena 2. Shino fought against Suzembaki with all his might. After finally securing victory by trapping his opponent in a sphere with his bugs and draining Suzembaki's chakra, he was quickly declared the winner by Oobleck. He felt vindicated when Oobleck had gone into details what Shino had done to win, and basked in the attention that some of the audience had decided to look at his match. Arena 3. Sesshomaru didn't even have to move when his opponent tried to use several earth jutsu to bury him. Ha ha. Die you bastard die, yelled out the Iwa nin. Suddenly, a whip that seemed to made out of light came out of Sesshomaru's hand and instantly cut all the earth into pieces. The whip wrapped around his opponent, where the Iwa nin started to scream in pain as the whip started to corrode his clothes and skin. Sesshomaru was declared the winner by Kodo. Arena 4. As Sora and Sai looked at each other, Sai tried to observe his opponent. His opponent didn't seem to have any weapons on him and just wore baggy black clothes. As soon as their announcer Tatsuko announced the fight to start, Sai charged at Sora with a Tonto in his hand. He planned to end this fast to bring glory to Danzo. Suddenly, he found his blade blocked by a weapon that he didn't even see Sora draw. Sora quickly pushed Sai away from the clash. Sai looked to see Sora wielding some sort of a huge key and using it like a blade. And he's using Kingdom Key. Why not the other blades? It's his trademark blade. A keyblade, mused Sai before he took out a scroll and his tools. Quickly, he drew small ink animals on his scroll and summoned them, sending them all to Sora, hoping to overwhelm him. Sora merely grinned before he dashed forward, taking the summons out fast with just one slash each. However, this brought Sai enough time to create even bigger ink drawings to attack. 6 giant lions came roaring out of Sai's scroll, surrounding Sora. "Give up now, or my lions will tear you apart," said Sai, while still drawing on another scroll, this time with a giant ink brush. Seeing Sora wasn't going to give up, the lions all pounced at him. Sora raised his keyblade to the sky, gather. A spell rose from his keyblade, where a diamond-shaped spell with spheres on each end came forth. The lions were suddenly attracted towards the spell, where they laid helpless in the air. "Thunder!" yelled Sora. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck down from the skies, smiting all the lions into oblivion. Seeing that he needed more time, Sai summoned ink clones to distract Sora while he finished his own drawing. It was a sealing technique where a giant tiger would come forth and drag his opponent into his painting. Sai hoped by sealing one of the Westerners and taking him to Danzo, he would help Konoha find out everything about the West. As the ink clones got closer, Sora's keyblade began to glow. Sonic Blade. Sora began to dash right through the ink clones, not even pausing after each dash and turning at impossible angles. The clones were instantly destroyed. Sai, however, managed to finish his drawing. Fuinjutsu. Koshi Tanden, Sealing Technique. Tiger Vision Staring Bullet. A giant tiger came forth from the scroll, roaring while it tried to bite Sora. Sora quickly backed up a bit before spinning his keyblade in his right hand. Time Splicer. The tiger suddenly froze, as if time had been stopped for it. Sora ran forward and slashed rapidly at the ink tiger. After 6 slashes, the tiger looked like it hadn't taken damage at all, but Sora continued forward towards Sai. Suddenly the tiger's time unfroze and tried to bite Sora. It looked like it was going to succeed when the slashes Sora had dealt earlier suddenly appeared all at once, scattering the tiger. At this act, the Easterners were terrified. Any shinobi capable of using time-space ninjutsu were usually classified as dangerous, and now they just saw someone literally stop time for a single target. Seeing as he had no more alternatives, Sai charged in with his Tonto again. "It's over," said Sora as his keyblade began to glow again. Ars Arcanum. The high-speed 13-hit combo from Sora proved too much for Sai to block, and started to get pummeled by him. Sora ended the combo with a flip and slammed his keyblade in front of Sai, blasting him off the arena, unconscious. Tatsuko quickly declared Sora the winner while trying to flirt with him. He looked uncomfortable, as he knew his girlfriend Kairi was also watching this. Arena 5. Tenzo win. Port starts talking about the time he had to cut through a forest to find his target, making Tenzo feel like he was the one who lost. Arena 6. Akatsuchi wins. The fighters were teleported back to the arena, where they received their applause. The next set of matches from the west side of the board were quickly highlighted on the tournament chart and enlarged to allow everyone to see who was next. Arena 1. Goku vs. Yaa, it's my turn to fight, shouted Goku. The Easterners were praying for a victory against the East at this point. Now, one of their strongest fighters, the Raikage, was finally up. A looked at his opponent, sizing him up. His opponent also had muscles comparable to him, but would he be fast enough? Arena 2. Anko vs Sheen. Anko looked pleased with this. This was a chance to reduce her traitor sensei's forces. Arena 3. Samui vs Kiri Junin. Arena 4. Chojuro vs Darui. Arena 5. Suna Junin vs Kiri Junin. Arena 6. Iwa Junin vs Kotoheim. The fighters went towards the middle of the arena to get ready to be teleported towards their arenas. Arena 1. As Goku and A got into their fighting position, they both glared at each other, sizing each other up. As soon as Radim, Their announcer for the fight said start. They both rushed each other. Blows after blows were blocked or dodged. After 5 minutes of fighting in close range, Goku landed the first punch to A's face. And point goes to Goku. Yelled Radim, if this was that sort of match. But Goku has drawn first blood. A quickly jumped back before deciding holding back was not an option. He wanted to study his opponent, but couldn't take the risk anymore. He could feel that Goku hadn't gone all out during that fight. Raiden no Yoroi. Lightning release armor. A's body was suddenly enveloped in lightning chakra before he dashed forward towards Goku at even greater speed. Shot a barrage of fists at Goku, hoping to land a punch. Goku managed to either dodge and, to most of the Easterners' shock, block his fist without worry. No way, yelled Karui. Nobody blocks those hits without worry. A, however, was having a time of his life. Here was a man who was just as manly as he was and was taking his attack head on. Soon, he was finally able to land a glancing blow on Goku's face. Goku quickly kicked towards A's chest, forcing him to cross his arms to defend. This attack allowed Goku to jump back a bit, leaving him a bit of breathing room. You're pretty good, said Goku. Ha, the same to you, laughed out A, don't hold back on me. He made a Raiden clone before jumping towards Goku and dropping an axe kick towards Goku. Goku dodged it and quickly threw a fist at A's face, who blocked it. Another fierce fight was upon them until A quickly jumped back a bit. Goku was a little confused until he saw the Raiden clone standing right behind him. A and his clone both charged at full speed with their lighting armor. Raiden. Modified double lariat. Original move is usually done with a collab of A and B. As the two were closing in fast at Goku, he put 2 fingers on his forehead. Just as the arms were about to crush Goku's neck and send his head flying, he instantly disappeared. What? Was that the Hiraishin? Yelled out almost all the Easterners. A himself was confused and immediately looked around to find his opponent. Not bad, a voice rang out. A looked up to see Goku hovering in midair. A gulped at this sight and thought, great. Not only does the West show they have superior fighters, but now they can fly. Goku landed back on the ground, wanting to make it a fair fight as he noticed it didn't rise into the air. All right then. Time to bring this up to the next level, said Goku. Kaioken. Goku was suddenly surrounded by a red aura. Most of the Easterners thought it was the release of the 8th inner gate, seeing that Goku had a red aura similar to what a person would have. Guy had a flashback of his father doing this move and thought Goku was crazy. Opening the 8th gate would surely kill him. However, as Guy observed closely, he noticed it was different. Goku's hair was not flaming red, a side effect of opening the 8th gate. Also, Goku's muscle mass seemed to increase a bit but did not seem like he was cutting his life away. Guy concluded that this was a technique different from it, but was very interested in it. Back to A and Goku's fight, A was a bit puzzled at the aura and the name. Kaio what? Asked A before a punch sent him flying. Goku then channeled his chakra and sent a blast of pure chakra from his other hand towards the Raiden clone, destroying it. The Easterners were quite in shock that there were fighters who could throw pure chakra attacks without any hand signs at all. Some people could do it, but they were very rare in the East. A shook his head to get clear it before he charged at Goku again with his lightning armor. However, he was shocked to see that Goku was now on par with him in terms of speed and strength. A barely dodged a right hook before launching an uppercut at Goku, who dodged it by leaning backward. A kick from Goku shot right towards A's chin as Goku decided to do a backflip instead of swaying forward after dodging. A barely dodged it before using a backhanded blade chop towards Goku's neck. Goku caught A's attack by the wrist. Using his free hand, Goku tried to punch A in the face again, only for it to be caught by A's free hand. Both fighters were at a stalemate for a bit, each struggling to overpower his opponent. Goku decided to kick it up another level. Kaioken X2. Times what? Said A, stupefied at this before Goku fell backwards, pulling A towards him. Goku let go of his opponent's hand and launched A up into the sky with his legs. Before A could regain his bearings, he felt a punch hit him from behind. A landed onto the floor with his whole body in a mighty thud, making cracks on the floor. A slowly got up, trying to ignore the pain. This was maddening. His opponent was now even faster and stronger than him. Tried to engage him in close combat again but found all his attacks easily blocked and countered. Goku punched in the stomach, doubling him over before following up with a hammer fist. Was barely conscious after that strike to the head. As a last-ditch effort, tried to grab Goku, hoping to use his powerbomb move to turn the tides. Goku easily dodged the last-ditch effort and finished it with a jaw-shattering uppercut. And the winner of this fight is Goku, shouted Radim. Back at the Colosseum, the Easterners, especially Kumo, were shocked to see a cage actually lose. Thought Orochimaru, if I can capture one of these fighters, I could experiment and perhaps find out even more about the body. Experimenting on demons would be new. Arena 2. Enko fought against Sheen with great enthusiasm before using her snakes to bite several vital parts, including his genitals, taking the victory for Konoha. Arena 3 Samui wins. Arena 4. Tie. Nobody proceeds to next round. For those who wanted to read a fight between them, sorry. I already wrote a fight using them earlier. Arena 5. Suna Junin wins. Arena 6. Kodoheim wins. All right. Instead of having a break, let's go directly to the seeded matches for both East and West side, since there's only 4 of them. Announced Eric. Arena 1. Tamari vs Shikamaru. URG. Troublesome. I'm against her again, groaned Shikamaru. Arena 2. Suna Junin vs Iwa Junin. Arena 3. Baki vs Kiri Junin. Arena 4. C vs Itachi. Will the fighters please step up to the plates? Said Eric. C didn't look pleased to be fighting Itachi, and was frankly frightened. Itachi was a legend already back in their own lands, how much did he improve here to live? As the fighters got ready, Tamari looked like she had a plan ready for Shikamaru, which prompted Shikamaru to say troublesome again. Arena 1. Utilizing his surroundings, Shikamaru managed to maneuver Tamari into a trap. However, she dodged it by jumping high into the air and using her wind jutsu to clear a path directly towards him. She quickly summoned her weasels and rushed him. She dodged the shadow that was headed straight for. She swung her fan down right towards Shikamaru's head. He made a modified hand sign while just barely dodging it. When Tamari came back for another swing, she suddenly stopped. She looked down to see that instead of a narrow shadow now, it was a huge circle, catching her summons along with her. The summons was quickly dispatched of by Shikamaru's shadow neck binding technique. Soon, it was only the 2 of them left. Shikamaru grabbed a knife he had placed in his back pocket, while Tamari grabbed nothing. As Shikamaru raised his hands up, he made a decision. Referee, I4. Before Shikamaru could finish his sentence, Tamari quickly yelled out, I forfeit. And the winner is Shikamaru Nara. Incredible intelligence, that young man, commented Oobleck. Shikamaru was a bit stunned at her sudden tactics. Tamari saw the shock on his face and smirked. I've already fought one of the Western's fighters, and this time I want to watch you fight against one. Shikamaru groaned, remembering that his next match he would most likely encounter Yusuke if he won his match. Troublesome woman, he muttered, earning a rap to his head from Tamari. Arena 2. Iwa Junin wins. Arena 3. Baki wins. Arena 4. C was extremely nervous. He had already fought Ryu, a Western competitor, and lost, and now was facing someone who was ranked S-class in their own system. He had confidence in his own abilities, but against someone like him, that confidence was easily shattered. As the fight started, C automatically used his genjutsu in hope that it would work and give him time. Raiden. Reigen Reikochu, lightning release, lightning illusion. His original plan was to blind Itachi and hopefully end the fight fast. This plan immediately failed as Itachi suddenly dispersed into crows as soon as C threw a punch. Before C could react, he felt a quick chop to his neck and fell unconscious. Itachi was easily declared the winner. Itachi. Soon you'll pay for your crimes and die, muttered Sasuke. He didn't even consider that he would lose. Orochimaru was observing Sasuke and was liking what he saw. He knew that Sasuke stood no chance, and a little push was all that was needed to have Sasuke defect to him. Then, he would finally be able to possess the Sharingan and fulfill one of his dreams, to be able to use all the ninjutsu known to the world. Another dream would easily follow that, the crushing of Konoha, once Sasuke was in his hands. After a 30-minute break to allow the audience to stretch, the fights were quickly reconvened. The screen showed who would be fighting next, starting from the east side. Arena 1. Yusuke vs Kiri Junin. All right, it's my turn now, said Yusuke as he got up. Arena 2. B vs Shino. Arena 3. Kiba vs Sesshomaru. All right Akamaru. Let's show these guys who's the real alpha. Yelled Kiba. I forgot to put Akamaru as part of the guest list, just imagine that he went along as a pet. Arena 4. Sora vs Suigetsu. Arena 5. Natsu vs Tenzo. Finally, I'm all fired up, yelled Natsu as he quickly ran up to the arena. Arena 6. Deidara vs Akatsuchi. The fighters got into the arena and were quickly transported to their respective arenas to fight. Arena 1. The Kiri Nin tried to use the hidden mist jutsu to hide his attacks, but Yusuke blew the mist away with his ray gun. A blast of chakra came out from his index finger that pointed directly to the ground. It blew up and dust quickly covered the arena. The Kiri Nin tried to find him but found out his mist was blown away. Before he could react, a punch came flying into his face and knocked him out. Yusuke was declared the winner. Arena 2. Shino tried his best, but B just had too much chakra that Shino couldn't drain off. B was also too fast for him with his weird sword style. B had replacement blades ready before coming to the west. Shino quickly forfeited, knowing he couldn't win. Arena 3. Kiba stood across from Sesshomaru with his dog Akamaru, ready to fight. His instincts told him to be careful, but his ego easily ignored it. He had Akamaru with him now, and with all his moves accessible, he was confident he could take out anyone, even a demon. Let's show this punk who's truly an alpha, yelled Kiba. Akamaru, however, was extremely wary against Sesshomaru, his instincts screaming at him that they were fighting a true alpha. As soon as the fight started, Kiba fed Akamaru a soldier pill before rushing toward Sesshomaru. Giju Ninpo. Shikyaku no Jutsu. All fours Jutsu. Kiba slashed and clawed at Sesshomaru, who merely dodged without seeming like he was trying. This nonchalant attitude pissed Kiba off before he tried another technique with Akamaru. Gatsuga. Fang over Fang. Kiba and Akamaru became whirling tornadoes with sharp edges. However, Sesshomaru still continued to dodge all the attacks. Kiba used a shadow clone to try to increase the number of attacks, but it was useless. However, Kiba misunderstood Sesshomaru's dodging as being unable to attack. Haha. You can't even attack, you weakling bitch. Jeered Kiba. That was the wrong thing to say apparently, because the next second, Kiba found himself, Akamaru, and his clone suddenly punched in the stomach and was sent flying off. Kiba coughed as he tried to regain his breath, with Akamaru trying to do the same. The clone already disappeared after taking such a brutal attack. Kiba looked up to see his opponent calmly walking towards them, with disgust in his eyes. This enraged Kiba even further. Come on Akamaru. Let's do this. Roared Kiba. Tensoga, Heavenly Twin Fang. They jumped up into the air while still using Gatsuga, however, they combined with each other when drilling down, making one huge drill right towards Sesshomaru. Instead of trying to dodge, Sesshomaru merely drew his blade, the Bakuseiga, the blade that manifested itself when he finally passed his rite of passage. He originally debated on using the explosive corrosion wave, but decided on using a regular demonic-filled swing. No need to go all out on this poor fool. He swung his blade right towards Kiba's attack, causing a massive explosion. Kiba and Akamaru were thrown out of their attack, with cuts all over their body. Kiba, however, refused to give up due to his pride. That's it. Time to show you why I'm the alpha of the Inazaku clan, and why you're just a weakling filthy Omega mutt. Screamed Kiba. Back in the stands. Ooh, that man is screwed, said Inuyasha, wincing at Kiba's comment. His wives agreed with him. Hana wanted to argue but had to admit that Kiba was going to regret saying that. Rin and Jaken were loudly cheering for Sesshomaru. Kagaya was merely smiling at what was to come. Naruto and Hinata also winced when they heard Kiba yell that out loud and knew he would be in a world of pain soon. Back to the execution grounds. Arena 3. Kiba made a clone of himself one more time before they both mounted onto Akamaru. Jinju Kongo Henge Santoro, three-headed wolf. Beat this. Yelled the three-headed wolf that was Kiba. Before he could attack, he suddenly felt overwhelming ki directed at him from Sesshomaru. He couldn't move, for he saw Sesshomaru's eyes turn blood red. The wind was gathering around him like a fierce hurricane, his face changing more feral. Suddenly, a pink aura surrounded him and made him disappear. The pink light rose to the sky, bouncing around for a bit before landing back down onto the ground. In his place was not Sesshomaru in his usual form, but instead a giant fierce white dog demon stood in his place, towering over Kiba's form easily. Kiba was not easily dissuaded and tried to attack. Uiga Gatenga, tail chasing rotating fang. Spinning at a high speed, Kiba spun forward towards Sesshomaru, who easily batted the attack with a lazy swipe of his paw. Kiba's attack was broken and went flying into a few trees before finally stopping. Before he could get up, Sesshomaru pounced him, putting his paw on Kiba's neck. Growling deeply, Sesshomaru made his point. Listen, you little mutt. If you were to compare yourself in true dog hierarchy, you're not even a beta. You're an omega, the lowest of them all, who doesn't know his place. Perhaps you will learn it in the afterworld. The announcer for this fight was Tatsuko, who couldn't announce the winner fast enough. Sesshomaru struck with his other paw, intent on ending the Omega's life. However, he found his paw stopped by the proctor who had accompanied the announcer. It was the Hayato Furinji, the elder of Ryazanpaku, who stopped the strike with one hand. That's enough, said the elder, this fight is over. No need to kill. Sesshomaru growled but obeyed. He may dislike many humans, but he respected the humans of Ryazanpaku, especially the elder, who could easily fight against him at full power. And the winner is Sesshomaru, announced Tatsuko, who finally got it together. Kiba's wolf form disappeared and was replaced with his regular form and Akamaru. Both were shivering from that near-death experience and knew for a fact now that their opponent was the Alpha, and compared to him, they were just Omegas. It was humiliating, but they knew better than to fight against the pecking order. Arena 4. Suigetsu slashed at Sora, who dodged it before slashing back. Usually, Suigetsu wouldn't care since the usual swords back at the east didn't affect his liquid body. However, Sora's Keyblade bypassed that defense and caused damage, causing Suigetsu to abandon his usual reckless strategy. Damn it. How do these Western fighters always have something that bypasses my water form so easily? Though Suigetsu. He didn't have time to contemplate more as Sora chucked his Keyblade bathed in fire at him, forcing him to dodge. The Keyblade flew back at Sora like a boomerang, who caught it in midair before driving his Keyblade to the ground where Suigetsu was. Spark dive. Suigetsu paled when he saw lightning coming to shock him and immediately jumped back as far away as he could. He raised his finger and pointed it to Sora like a gun before shooting out several water bullets. Sora easily blocked them before running towards him again. Suigetsu decided to try something else. Water clone jutsu. A dozen water clones were formed before they all charged at Sora. Sora blocked a few before sticking his Keyblade into one of them. Instead of deforming, it stuck onto his Keyblade. Before they knew what was happening, Sora was swinging the water clone like a flail, hitting all the other clones in the process, forcing them to all dissolve. Sora decided things needed to speed a bit. Give me strength, yelled Sora. He was instantly bathed in light before the clothes he was wearing changed from black to red. Valor form. With two Keyblades suddenly in his hands, Sora dashed forward towards Suigetsu, slashing and hacking at high speeds. Suigetsu couldn't attack at all, and soon, bruises and cuts were all over his body. All right, that's it, yelled Suigetsu, leaping over to where the river was in the arena. He quickly drank the water he had in his water bottle before absorbing all the water from the river, forming a giant mutant fish with tentacles. Take this, yelled Suigetsu as he slammed the tentacles towards the Sora. They made huge impacts on the ground that Sora was on, forming dust clouds everywhere. Nobody could see if Suigetsu's attack was successful. A few seconds later, they heard something shatter into pieces. Suigetsu's tentacles all blew up from an explosion. Wisdom form. Reflect. Sora had changed from Valor form to Wisdom form in an instant, his clothes went from red to blue, and he only carried one Keyblade. However, he was now hovering above the ground and gliding on it. Suigetsu, not discouraged by Sora's counterattack, tried to use a different tactic and made even more tentacles, smaller than before. He was attempting quantity over quality, hoping an attack would at least land. Sora deflected a few before hatching a crazy idea. He suddenly jumped over one, landed on it, and started sliding on it towards Suigetsu's main body. Suigetsu was shocked at this and tried to use his attacks on it, but missed. Soon, Sora jumped and was directly above Suigetsu's giant fish, where his main body was. Sora then grinned, causing Suigetsu to shudder at that. Freeze! Shouted Sora, shooting 5 giant pieces of ice directly at Suigetsu. The ice instantly froze the water upon contact, trapping Suigetsu inside. Sora descended down onto the now frozen fish and slammed his keyblade down with all his might, shattering the ice and knocking Suigetsu out of his form, unconscious. Radim quickly declared him the winner. Arena 5. Tenzo was not enjoying himself. He had Mokuden, one of the most feared bloodlines of the East, and yet his opponent was just burning through all his attacks with indiscriminate fire. Speaking of fire, time to dodge. Karyu no Koko, Fire Dragon's Roar. Natsu shot a large blast of fire from his mouth after taking a huge breath, shooting it right through the defense Tenzo made earlier, again. I've heard of overwhelming firepower, but this is ridiculous. That man takes it literally, muttered Tenzo irritably before making some wood clones. His plan was to trick Natsu and sneak up behind him and end it. Before they could separate, Natsu was already upon them with both of his hands on fire. With a flame on the right hand and a flame on the left hand. When you combine the flames together, Karyu no Kone, Fire Dragon's brilliant flame, Natsu clasped his hands together, and a huge explosion went off, with Tenzo right in the middle. He couldn't do a replacement in time, so the clones he made surrounded him to try to take the brunt of the hit. Tenzo was sent flying off to a nearby river, unconscious. Natsu was the winner. Arena 6. Deidara wins. After the east side of the chart was done with their fights, the screen quickly displayed who would be fighting next in the west side. Arena 1. Kakuzu vs Goku. It'll be interesting to take on his heart for my stash. I wonder how much power I can squeeze out of it, mused Kakuzu. Arena 2. Orochimaru vs. Anko. Anko glared at her former sensei, ready to get vengeance for all those years. Orochimaru just smiled darkly. Arena 3. Frankenstein vs. Samui. Arena 4. Iwa Junin gets a pass. Arena 5. Suna Junin vs. Suna Junin, I know, just happened to be chance of the drawing. Arena 6. Sasuke vs Kodohime. Sakura would have used her banshee voice if it wasn't for the fact that Naruto asked Hisoka to shut her up. He gummed a silencing seal on her back and gummed her mouth shut for good measure. Remember, Kodohime, I want you to convince Sasuke to come to Odo during the fight, reminded Orochimaru. Of course, Orochimaru-sama. Anything for you, said Kodohime. Arena 1. This was just not going well for Kakuzu. He thought he had seen all of Goku's moves, but clearly, Goku didn't show everything in his fight against A. In the beginning, Kakuzu had threatened to tear Goku's heart out for his own use. When he heard that, Goku showed no mercy, automatically using Kaioken X2 and beating the crap out of him. Kakuzu took so much damage that he was forced to use his water heart and earth heart to stay alive. His hardened skin proved useless as Goku showed he could punch through rocks easily. Before Kakuzu could use his lighting mask to perform a jutsu, Goku suddenly flooded the arena with light. It was as if a sun had popped out of the arena and blinded him a bit before he noticed his lightning mask was crushed beneath Goku's foot. That is it. I'm tired of losing my hearts. I don't even care if I destroy your heart before I can use it, just die. Yelled Kakuzu as he quickly drew the lightning mask back. It was just barely alive and had enough for one last large attack. Kaden. Zukoku. His fire mask opened up and a huge burst of flame came forth. Futon. Atsugai. His wind mask opened up and blasted wind from its mouth, causing the fire to grow even bigger. Raiden. Gion. Kakuzu himself channeled lightning into the blast. Triple Element Jutsu. Chaos Impulse, original name, based off a Gundam. Goku didn't even seem worried at this huge attack that was coming towards him. Instead, he planted his feet down, focusing his chakra before putting his hand together behind him. Energy could clearly be seen gathering in his hands. Ka, mi, ha, A huge blast of blue energy left Goku's hands as soon as he put them in front of him. Both attacks met each other in the middle of the arena, causing it to be a stalemate. Give up now. It's useless to struggle. I'll kill you and get my hearts from your pathetic friends, yelled Kakuzu as he tried to channel more chakra into his attack. Then he heard something he wished it wasn't true. Kaioken, yelled Goku. No, said Kakuzu in disbelief. Times, continued Goku, as if Kakuzu hadn't said anything. No, 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 yelled Kakuzu, almost pleading Goku now. 4, shouted Goku, deciding to skip X3 and go straight for 4. No, 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 no. Fuuuucc, yelled Kakuzu as his attack was pushed back even further and dispersed, leaving him to take the full brunt of Goku's attack. The attack carried him out of the arena and into the barrier that had been placed all around each arena. When Goku's attack finally dispersed, Kakuzu was barely alive with all his masks shattered and unconscious. Arena 2. Ow! Anko screamed in pain. She was clutching on the nape of her neck. The cursed seal that was on her neck was acting up, and she had no way to stop it from hurting. Orochimaru just grinned, relishing the fact that his latest victim was his first disciple. Does it hurt, Anko-chan? Teased Orochimaru. I think it's time to end your suffering. Your body shall prove beneficial for my latest research. He opened his mouth, in which a snake appeared out that regurgitated his Kusanagi sword. The sword floated into the air bit before he took it by the hilt. Seeing that Anko couldn't continue anymore, Ublek quickly announced that Orochimaru was the winner. Orochimaru either didn't hear him or ignored it as he charged towards Anko, intent on stabbing her. Suddenly Orochimaru saw Anko disappear in a blur and felt a kick to his chin. He shook his head and noticed that Ublek had Anko in his arms while the proctor, Ma Kensai, had delivered the kick. Enough. I won't forgive you if you hurt this beautiful lady, said Kensai. Orochimaru growled, but decided to obey, for now. He would just have to plan some way to grab revenge later on. Kensai tried to perform treatment on her, only to slightly grope her before being chased by the Ublek for improper conduct. Arena 3. Samui was breathing heavily. Her opponent seemed to be a normal butler, but she couldn't land an attack on him at all. It seemed like he knew what she was planning already, and could counter everything without even breaking a sweat. She still had no idea what his power was, as he stuck with the basics taijutsu. She remembered Yugito's warning about this opponent, but she couldn't imagine she would be this helpless. She decided to forfeit, thus letting Frankenstein go on to the next round. She didn't feel like fighting Orochimaru even if she did win. Arena 4. Iwa gets a pass, but gives up on account he freaks out he has to fight Itachi next round. Arena 5. Suna Junin wins. Arena 6. Kotoheim managed to ensnare Sasuke into her hair. Sasuke easily cut through it, but not before Kotoheim whispered into his ears. Come to Oto, and all your dreams will come true, whether it would be power, women, or riches. Orochimaru will personally welcome you. Only the strong woman shall become your wives to sire your children and bring back the Uchiha to glory. Sasuke savagely kicked her away, but before he could follow up on the attack, Kotoheim announced her intention to surrender. As they were whisked back to the Colosseum, Sasuke took time to actually contemplate his decision to defect, and with Kotoheim's word, his decision to defect was growing stronger. After Eric announced that the fights would continue tomorrow, everyone hurried back to their designated shelter. Shikamaru was trying to plan out how to fight against Yusuke, Baki was terrified of fighting against Goku, and Orochimaru was planning on how to put his seal on a Western competitor to influence him to defect to him. Many of them asked what Hannah had learned, seeing as she had actually sat in the audience with some of the Westerners, but she told them there wasn't much to learn. The Raikage was contemplating on how the Emperor when B started to rap again. He had to put those thoughts on hold to do a drop kick on B to stop making a fool of himself. After subjecting B to a few brotherly punches, he found himself alone with his village members. Samui quickly took this time to approach A. Yugito Nisama gave me a letter and told me it was for you specifically. She mentioned something about putting a good word for us, and that the Emperor of the Imperial West would be willing to meet with us tonight. She specified only you, B, and me could come, whispered Samui. I didn't need long to think about it and immediately accepted when he read the letter. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, A, B, and Samui snuck to the meeting point, where they were blindfolded and led teleported to the palace by Goku. They were quite shocked to see that the Emperor was Naruto, but quickly got down to business. They soon agreed on a non-aggression pact with some trade agreement. It was not as lenient as Kiri's or Suna, but it was expected since Neji still had a slight grudge on Kumo for what happened to his father. Meanwhile, Uchiha was talking to Naruto and 3 other people, as Yugito was still with Samui. Are you sure you want to come out like this, Naruto-sama? We don't necessarily need you for this part of the tournament. The others agreed. Thanks for the worry, guys, but I still plan to do this. Don't worry, those that don't know won't suspect a thing. That's what shadow clones are for, replied Naruto as the night crept in. The next day rolled out faster than the Easterners expected. As they got to their seats, Tamari and Hana were actually invited to sit with Kagura and her box again. As everyone got into their seats, Sasuke was considering accepting Orochimaru's invitation. Now all he needed was a plan to get there. Before he could think about this more, an announcement interrupted his thoughts. All right folks, I hope you're excited as I am, shouted Eric. Today's the last day of this tournament. All the fights will be hosted in the Colosseum again, and one fight will be happening, so everyone can pay attention to just one fight. Even the Emperor and his consort look happy. The Easterners turned around to see the Emperor and his consort already at their seats. Those that knew his identity just smirked and knew soon the revelation of his identity would be shocking. Indeed, said Port. Our finest seal makers have created the strongest barriers surrounding the arena so no collateral damage can possibly happen. The competitors may go use everything they have without worry of harming the audience. Now, just in case the seals aren't enough, we do have a backup plan. Allow us to introduce the 6 people who will supply chakra for the barrier jutsu. Please welcome our Jinchuriki Corps. Inside, just before they were about to step out, they asked the 7th of their member that originally did not plan to join in. Are you sure? Asked Roshi. Everybody else shared the same concern. Yes. I have remained hidden for too long. I may not have intentionally led my village to such a bloody time, but it was still my fault that I was under a genjutsu. I want to let Akatsuki know they can no longer control me, said the 7th member. He had stitches under his left eye and carried a weapon that was much taller than him. 6 people stepped out, all wearing similar white shinobi clothing as a uniform. Think of when all the Jinchuriki wore the same outfit in Killer Bee's Infinite Tsukuyomi. They knew of Uchiha and Yugito, but the other surprised them all, especially Iwa. Isn't that Han of Steam? Roshi's still alive. I thought Taki said Fu died. Isn't that Yagura of Kiri? I thought he was killed during the Mist Revolution. Then, a 7th man stepped out. Wearing the same uniform as the rest, his sun-kissed blonde hair could easily be seen. The man who stepped out shocked Konoha. It was Minato. Or so they thought. After looking at him more closely, they noticed that the eye shape didn't belong to him, although the man was a close clone. However, the whisker marks gave it away who this truly was. Is that Naruto? Shouted Iruka. Every Easterner who didn't know Naruto was still alive grew wide at this revelation. The demon of Konoha was actually residing in the West, still alive and part of the Imperial West. Homura already started to make plans on somehow bringing Naruto back on trumped-up charges. He was so sure that the Emperor wouldn't want Naruto once he found out who Naruto was, and failed to realize that even demons were allowed to live peacefully in the West. Tsunade desperately wanted to jump out and hug the boy who she viewed as her grandson, but she controlled her emotion. She would find some way to overturn the council's decision and bring Naruto home somehow. The rest of Konoha's crew were of mixed reactions. The majority of them were the ones who didn't support the banishment of Naruto and were just glad to see him alive. The others were not. Sai just smiled while he planned to bring this news to Danzo as soon as possible. Naruto didn't even seem to acknowledge them as he took his place farthest from Konoha's stand. All 7 of the Jinchuriki Corps performed the same hand signs, making sure Sasuke could not see it, before slamming their hands down. A huge barrier formed around the arena, completely protecting the audience from any stray attacks. It soon cleared up, leaving it to be a see-through barrier, but its defense was strong enough to take a continuous burst of Biju blasts and not leave a dent. Starting from east side. Match 1. Yusuke and Shikamaru's fight was first. As they stepped into the arena, it had been transformed into a forest, with trees between them. As the fight began, Shikamaru was already trying to blaze through different scenarios and strategies. He didn't expect Yusuke to have such a direct approach, who just dived through the forest in a straight line, aiming for him. Damn it. I hate opponents who seemingly just throw away basic tactics and abandon all forms of strategies. Thought Shikamaru as he tried to adjust according to the situation. Usually, such opponents were easy targets to trap. However, Yusuke was a battle savant and dodged through all of Shikamaru's tricks. He shot a Reagan spirit gun at Shikamaru, who cursed and was forced to dodge. However, Yusuke was already next to Shikamaru and punched him in the stomach. When Yusuke reeled back to deliver another punch, he found himself frozen. Shadow possession jutsu success, groaned Shikamaru. He thought it was a miracle that he was still conscious after that punch. He quickly made the sign have the shadows start creeping up Yusuke's body. Give up? Asked Shikamaru. He found it troubling when Yusuke grinned. Look down and see who should give up, smirked Yusuke. Shikamaru looked down to see his opponent's left hand already in a shape of a gun, with chakra already gathered on the index finger ready to fire. Shikamaru gulped at this sight. There was no way for him to escape that shot, and his attacks could not kill Yusuke fast enough. Then, he had a thought. Did Yusuke plan so far ahead that he purposely let himself be captured by the jutsu just to have his other hand prepared? I give up. This match is too troublesome, stated Shikamaru. As the match ended, Yusuke hooked his arm over Shikamaru, grinning like madman. Nice fight. You're lucky I've already fought so many strategists. You seem pretty smart, though. Come on over to my place if you ever have time. Maybe you can give the old hag some company playing shogi, said Yusuke. Somewhere else in her house, Genkei sneezed. Match 2. B was fighting Sesshomaru and wasn't winning, to most of Kumo's amazement. His sword style was defeated, and he was already using his tailed beast's power. Even with Gyuki's, or the Hachibi's, power, though, he could not gain the upper hand. Sesshomaru's sword just kept cutting him, and when he used the Biju ball and fired, Sesshomaru countered with his sword technique, firing a slash of demonic energy from his sword. Explosive corrosion wave. The attack collided with the ball and exploded. Before B could react in his demon form, he found Sesshomaru with his blade pointed directly between his eyes. B could hear Gyuki warning him not to make any sudden movements, otherwise, he would die. The sword itself prevented regeneration of any sort. Seeing no alternative, B forfeited the match. Match 3. Sora vs Iwa. Sora wins. Match 4. All right. I'm all fired up, yelled out Natsu as he jumped onto the stage. HMPH. I'll show you that art as an explosion, said Deidara. Natsu answered back with a dragon's breath as soon as the match started. Deidara was a bit surprised to see something blow but didn't think much about it, except how his opponent also liked to blow things up. He quickly made some explosive birds and sent them flying towards Natsu, who dodged them. The match went on for a while until Deidara was finally able to have some of his explosive spiders land on Natsu's shoulder. Haha, it's over. Eat C3 explosion, shouted Deidara as he detonated the bombs. Natsu managed to get the spiders off his body and toss them in front of him, but it was too late. A giant explosion went off, with Natsu right in the middle of it. Hee. Call it ref. He's dead, smirked Deidara as he turned away. Then, he suddenly heard a slurping noise. He turned around to see the explosion was being eaten. He watched in shock as the explosion got smaller and smaller until he could see his opponent actually eating the explosion. Soon, Natsu was done eating all the fire that had come from the explosion. Thanks for the food, commented Natsu. What the hell are you? Shouted Deidara. Feeling that he couldn't risk it anymore, he decided to unleash the jutsu he had been saving up for Itachi. He quickly used his clay to mold his C4 while trying to dodge Natsu's fists of fire. He couldn't risk using the big version due to the fact that since he was in a limited zone, he couldn't get out. Instead, he took one of Natsu's punch while putting clay onto his body. He almost regretted it immediately since he almost fell unconscious due to the punch. Feeling the burn on his face, Deidara quickly activated his jutsu. The clay on Natsu started to surround him, and soon he was stuck in an orb of clay. Ha ha ha. You're dead this time. Inside that sphere is my C4 explosive, my strongest one yet. Die, yelled Deidara as he activated it. He didn't expect his clay sphere to suddenly blow up. That's not right. C4 explosions are supposed to erode my opponent's entire body with micro explosions inside his body, thought Deidara. Instead, he saw Natsu, without a scratch, and completely surrounded by fire. "Raaaaaaaaa!" yelled out Natsu as he charged forward. Deidara swore he saw a dragon behind Natsu, roaring behind him. Deidara soon found out with the fire surrounding Natsu, it was impossible to have his C4 even come close to Natsu since they were burnt as soon as they come upon contact with the flames. "What are you?" asked Deidara, shocked that nothing was working. "I'm a dragon slayer. Eat this," shouted Natsu. "Karyu no Tekken. Kagizum. Yokugeki. Kenkaku." Deidara couldn't even tell how many times he had been attacked, due to the fact that he was just in so much pain. Natsu decided to end this match. Metsu no Ugi. Gurren Bakuinjin. Secret Dragon Arts. Crimson Lotus. Exploding Flame Blade. Deidara would have loved to see this attack done since it had to do with explosions. Unfortunately, he was in no shape to admire it as he was hit by it and sent flying off the arena and into the barrier, knocking him unconscious. Natsu raised his arm as he was declared the winner. West Side. Match 1. Baki automatically forfeited. He had no desire to find out how many times he could take a hit from Goku or how far he could take Kaioken. Match 2. Orochimaru chuckled as he saw his opponent. A mere pretty boy butler should be no match for him. Why don't you forfeit the match if you want to live? Or better yet, let me experiment on you. I'm sure your body will be an invaluable resource. After all, I am the best at human modifications in this world, taunted Orochimaru. Every Western cringed at that threat. Orochimaru had said the wrong thing. A chuckle could be heard from Frankenstein. Soon, it became louder and louder until it was just maniacal laughter. Orochimaru felt something was off. "You experiment on me? That's laughable," laughed Frankenstein. "I've heard all about your experiments. How you wanted immortality, and how many lives and failures you've had. From one scientist to another. No, I can't even call you a scientist. Just an amateur who doesn't know what he's doing. How dare you?" shouted Orochimaru, completely insulted by this man. "I've changed my mind. I'll kill you." Orochimaru's neck elongated and tried to bite the man. As soon as his mouth got close, his felt with every fiber of his body that he was in danger, and used this special mud clone replacement. A few milliseconds later, that body was stabbed by multiple sharp purple poles that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. Those powers don't feel right, thought Orochimaru. He didn't have much time to ponder as his opponent materialized more spears and shot them towards him. Orochimaru dodged them and soon had to jump to avoid getting hit. Perfectly placed. Orochimaru looked up to see Frankenstein already above him and shooting even more of his spears. Seeing no other way, he used a fire jutsu to block it, followed by a wind jutsu to increase his firepower. However, 2 spears made it through and stabbed him. Grunting in pain, he landed and quickly pulled them out, hoping his power of the white snake would regenerate the damage. He then found out that somehow, those spears completely nullified his healing powers completely. It felt like it was like poison, but this was no poison he was familiar with at all. "Repeat what you said earlier," said Frankenstein, suddenly in front of Orochimaru. "You want to use me as an experiment. You're the best at human modification in this world. You'll pay for that," growled Orochimaru as he leapt back for some distance. He took out some scrolls and unsealed them. 2 almost dead bodies laid before him. Orochimaru quickly went through some seals before slamming his palms down onto the ground. Kuchiyos. Edo Tensai, summoning. Impure world resurrection. The 2 bodies were suddenly consumed by coffins. Then, slowly, the coffin doors opened, and 2 bodies that looked like it was decaying stepped out. Orochimaru. "How dare you?" shouted as the rest of Kumo also saw red. "That bastard," growled Gaara, along with the rest of his people. Orochimaru had essentially spit on their faces as he had revived the 3rd Raikage and 3rd Kazekage, A and Minoru A.N., I don't think the author ever put a name for him. I'm using the Japanese voice actor's name for this. Also, for the third Reikage, putting him as 3A, so as not to confuse with the alive one. Kukuku. These cages were powerful fighters in their own time. I would have loved to summon the Shadaime Hokage, but he's sealed up. I won't even have to move, taunted Orochimaru as he quickly placed Fudo seals into their heads. Soon, the cage's body regained color and looked normal. The only difference was that their eyes were black. They were under the complete will of Orochimaru now. Summoning cannon fodder now, said Frankenstein as he raised his eyebrow. Still, to use lives of people without remorse, to bring them back from their eternal sleep, is despicable. Allow me to show you my weapon. Answer my call, Dark Spear. He raised his hand to the sky. The Jinchuriki quickly made a hole at the top of the barrier, confusing the Easterners. Suddenly, a bolt of dark lightning descended from the heavens, striking Frankenstein's hand. It soon gave form, and suddenly, Frankenstein was carrying a large two-sided dark purple spear. However, the aura it exuded made his opponents shiver. It felt extremely dark and alive with an aura that seemed to scream that it wanted to devour souls. An interesting weapon, mused Orochimaru. I'll have to study it when I take it from your dead body. 3A and Minoru suddenly attacked Frankenstein. However, even with all their ability and speed, Frankenstein seemed to still be in control of the situation. He showed this by using a slashing ranged attack at 3A. He dodged it, but Orochimaru was standing right behind him, forcing him to also dodge. What's wrong? I thought you said you didn't need to move, stated Frankenstein sarcastically. Orochimaru growled and attacked him along with his summons. Suddenly, Minoru was stabbed in the gut when Frankenstein actually threw his weapon straight at him. It's useless. My summons are truly immortal and can't die by physical means, said Orochimaru confidently as Minoru tried to pull the weapon out. His confidence was shaken when he saw Minoru unable to pull the weapon out, but instead, the weapon started to latch onto his hands and spread its corruption all over his body. Orochimaru, along with the rest of the Easterners, watched in shock as the weapon slowly consumed Minoru. As the corruption broke the Fuda seal, Minoru was able to regain his free will. He looked at Frankenstein with one last look and smiled as if to say thanks, before the weapon suddenly blurred all around him, creating a dark whirlwind. What was left was only the spear in the ground. What did you do to my summon? Shouted Orochimaru angrily as he made 3A attack Frankenstein. Frankenstein raised his hand, summoning his weapon back to him before blocking 3A's attack. My weapon liked him, said Frankenstein curtly, not even bothering to further explain. He parried 3A's attack and immediately followed up with another attack, causing a large gash at his body. Frankenstein's power corrupted the wound, causing it to heal a lot slower than usual. Frankenstein had no trouble dealing with two opponents, and soon, 3A had also been consumed by his spear. Orochimaru was now truly terrified at this man. His summons had somehow been consumed, along with their souls, and he could no longer summon them. He didn't have another close-to-death body to use, and all the jutsu he had was useless against this man. He debated on using Manda, but decided it wasn't worth it. Orochimaru quickly forfeited right as the spear was about to stab him between his eyes. Match 3. Itachi gets free pass due to his opponent forfeiting before the fight. Match 4. The Suna Nin was actually making it hard for Sasuke to win. Sasuke's temper grew and grew until it broke. I will not have some low-life peasant stop me from getting my revenge. Shouted Sasuke as his eyes morphed into the Mangekyo Sharingan, a kaleidoscope version. So, he has attained it as well, but the price he paid for it, muttered Itachi. He merely told his brother a lie on how he got his. In truth, when he watched Shisui commit suicide, he was traumatized by it that he gained his ability. He still blamed himself for not being able to do anything, though. Naruto and Hinata also frowned when they saw the Mangekyo Sharingan. Their spies through the Pakara merchant house gave a report of when and how Sasuke attained it. It was said that he took in a disciple and treated him like a brother. The two grew close together, almost inseparable. When the disciple became a Chunin, Sasuke's gift to him was a Chidori through the heart while the disciple's gift to him supposedly was his Mangekyo Sharingan. The Shinobi Council wanted to punish, and even execute him for such a crime. However, the elders and the civilian council intervened, and he was let off with a fine and a slap on the wrist. To them, though, this still didn't explain how he got it. Itachi told them that it was through a traumatic experience did he actually get his eyes. If Sasuke didn't hesitate to kill his own disciple at all, the experience shouldn't have been traumatic enough to awaken it. See Omake on possibilities. Sasuke activated Susanoo, the purple skeletal first level, and attacked relentlessly. The Sunanin knew he had no chance. Seeing no other option, he forfeited. Before the referee could call it, though, Sasuke attacked. Die. Amaterasu. The Sunanin was suddenly on fire. He tried to smother it by rolling, but it wouldn't go out. These flames will burn you for 7 days and nights, and is impossible to extinguish. Die. Knowing you were a fool to oppose me, taunted Sasuke. Natsu and Sora suddenly appeared next to the burning man. Sasuke scoffed, thinking they wouldn't be able to do anything. Natsu merely touched the flame, and yet it didn't burn him. Then, Natsu started to inhale, eating all the fire that was on the burning man. As soon as the fire was off, Sora quickly used cure to heal the man before bringing him to the hospital tent. Sasuke fumed at this. These bastards stopped him from delivering his version of righteous justice. Before he could react, Natsu roared to the skies and blew the excess fires into the sky. After he finished, he patted his stomach. Phew, those are some good flames. Flames that burns for a long time, said Natsu. Sasuke took a step towards Natsu and suddenly found himself surrounded by Ryazanpaku members. Try it. Give me a reason to send you out of here, growled Sakari. Take one more step, and find yourself in a world of pain, said Furenji Hayato. Sasuke muttered a few curse words before leaving the arena. He passed by Naruto, and grinned at him. How's it feel, Dobi, to see me still above you? Taunted Sasuke. Naruto merely smirked back. The only thing you're standing above right now is a pile of shit. And I mean that literally. Sasuke looked down to see that his foot was indeed on top of a pile of shit. Growing angrier, he huffed and walked away with as much dignity as he could, while everyone was laughing at him. Skipping the Western fight. I know some of you like it, but at the same time I know we all want to see the aftermath of the tournament, so skipping those. I'll provide a brief summary of them. An hour break was given to allow the audience to do whatever they needed to do. All fighters were healed to their full strength, albeit reluctantly for Sasuke. Soon, the matches were up again. Match 1. Yusuke vs Sesshomaru. Yusuke barely wins with a well-placed Reikoden Spirit Wave into Sesshomaru's gut. Match 2. Sora vs Natsu. Sora and Natsu fight using their strongest moves. In the end, double KO. Match 3. Goku vs Frankenstein. Goku may not be smart, but when it came to fighting, his instincts is truly a threat. Frankenstein's plans get derailed a few times due to it. Goku wins by a margin using Kaiken X10. Match 4. Itachi vs Sasuke. Sasuke stared at Itachi with hatred. Here was the day he would finally get vengeance for his clan. Here was the day he would no longer be under his shadow. Here was the day that Itachi would die in front of everyone. Here would begin. Sasuke snapped out of his murderous thoughts just to see a sickle kick headed right towards his face. He barely dodged it before receiving a back kick to his stomach. He flew backward from the kick, but recovered with a back flip and slid on the ground. He looked up, Sharingan active to see 5 kunais flying towards him. He blocked them with his kunai, but just as he finished block the last one with a swipe of his right hand, a foot landed on his right arm. He looked up and paled to see Itachi coming down with an axe kick. He was forced to block with his left arm, but the impact still jarred his body. He jumped back and looked at Itachi to see him suddenly disperse into crows. You're still weak. Sasuke looked behind him to see Itachi with his kunai pointed at his back, Sharingan also active. How I ever thought you would be the one to redeem the Uchiha name is beyond me, said Itachi. Sasuke saw red and jumped away from him while performing the hand signs for his favorite fire jutsu. A huge fireball went towards Itachi, who dodged it with no trouble at all. A Fuma shuriken came flying at him. Itachi ducked and saw that another one was in its shadow. He leapt, jumping in the narrow gap between them. Sasuke smirked as he saw this and pulled the strings he had attached to the shurikens. They separated, and two of the blades were headed right towards him. If Itachi was still sick from guilt and his eyes tired from abuse as a handicap, he would not have been able to dodge it. However, ever since he traveled to the West, he found the best doctors and psychiatrists to help him recover, and become even stronger than he thought he could have been. Well, he had to if he wanted to help Naruto conquer the West. Instead, he threw two kunais at the blades and deflected them away from him. He did a front flip to regain his position before dashing towards Sasuke. Sasuke threw more shurikens to deter him, but Itachi easily blocked them with his own shurikens before having a few go through. They curved and missed, making it go behind him. Sasuke blazed through hand signs and charged forward. Chidori. Sasuke charged forward with it, intent on ending Itachi's life. His tunnel vision was so huge that he didn't notice that the sum of the shurikens Itachi threw were actually doubled up and thrown together. At that moment, the shurikens ricocheted off each other, and 3 shurikens were headed right towards Sasuke's back. Using wind chakra, Itachi blocked the Chidori by grabbing his wrist while diffusing the lightning chakra. Sasuke glared with hatred at Itachi, struggling and trying to overpower his brother. He looked him in the eye and saw Itachi had already formed the Mangekyo Sharingan. Tsukuyomi. Sasuke suddenly found himself in a world devoid of life. He looked around and recognized this to be Itachi's genjutsu. Before he could break out of it, Itachi appeared before him. Calm yourself, little brother. I want to talk to you first. Sasuke growled and tried to attack him before he found himself bound to a cross. There, Itachi used the time to explain the truth about the Uchiha clan and Konoha. Sasuke became silent while Itachi told him everything, even his promise to their parents. When Itachi was done explaining, he offered Sasuke a choice. Come with him and find peace, or reject his offer. Sasuke looked pensive at first, making Itachi believe that he had convinced his little brother. However, that changed when he saw Sasuke's eyes still burn with rage and spat at him. The Uchiha clan had every right to overthrow those weaklings and shown the world who was the strongest. The Sharingan is the ultimate bloodline. You're no Uchiha, you should rip those eyes out if you were smart. He truly has fallen far. It's not even worth using Shisui's eye anymore. Goodbye, my brother, thought Itachi as Sasuke finally activated his Mangekyo Sharingan to dispel Tsukuyomi. They were back into the real world, where only about 3 seconds had passed. Itachi normally would have been tired from using Tsukuyomi once, but his training plus learning, even more, ways to experiment with his bloodline thanks to Frankenstein allowed him to use it multiple times without a sweat. I'll kill you, shouted Sasuke. Then he felt 3 shurikens hit his back and grunted. Itachi used this chance and kicked him away. Suddenly, Sasuke's Susanoo sprang up. This time, it was a humanoid one. See, my hatred for you has allowed me to evolve my armor once more. Die, like the traitor you are, shouted Sasuke. He used his form to fire arrows at Itachi, hoping to hit him once. Some were even cloaked in black flames. Itachi calmly dodged them all without much struggle. Once I've killed you, I'll make sure Naruto die too. He should have been killed a long time ago, underneath my foot. Then, I'll take all the strong women have the Uchiha clan reborn. It's a shame that Hyuga bitch ran away. She would have made a fine bitch, considering she was well developed even when she was young. I also need to get revenge on the shitty ramen cook too. Her daughter would have made a nice for practice, shouted Sasuke, insanity clear in his eyes now. Hearing Sasuke talk about Hinata-maid Hiashi, Naruto, and Neji, who was sitting somewhere in the stadium, hidden, clenched their fist. Naruto wanted to just bust in and beat the Tem to the ground, but knew this fight belonged to Itachi. What might happen later, though, is another story. Do you mean Ayame, Chuki's daughter? Asked Itachi. Yay, that bitch, grinned Sasuke. She looked nice, but once I'm done with her, she'll look like a pig and be a whore. She won't be blessed with any Uchiha children, ha ha ha. URG. Suddenly, Sasuke felt a punch right through his Susanoo and into his stomach. He looked down to see Itachi seemingly teleport right in front of him and gave a gut-shattering punch with only his fist and red chakra that was cloaked around it. Sasuke was bent double by it, and when Itachi pulled back, Sasuke threw up what he had eaten. He looked up with rage at Itachi, only to flinch and feel fear through his bones. On Itachi's face, was no longer his usual stoic face. Sasuke had only seen that face and what seemed to be his happy face. Now, rage could be seen all over Itachi's face, and it was completely directed at him. "That's my future wife you talking about," stated Itachi coldly. When Ayame and Tsuki first came to the west, they were greeted by Naruto and his group. Ayame's first reaction was to slap Itachi before giving him a hug and a kiss, surprising everyone. This wasn't the first time they met, though. When they were younger, they used to play with each other. Even when Itachi became a genin at 7, they still would talk to each other. When Izumi flirted with Itachi, Ayame would get jealous, but Itachi kept reassuring her it was one-sided. As time grew, they went through longer times without talking to each other thanks to Itachi's job. However, they would still meet up when they had the chance. Their feelings for each other started to develop from there. When Itachi killed his clan, Ayame refused to believe that Itachi would do such a thing without a reason. She later found a note for her hidden in a secret place where only she and Itachi knew. In the letter, was a promise that he would someday come back to explain and ask for forgiveness if she was willing to wait for him. Even after all those years, Ayame held on to that promise, not even going on dates, while her father was worried that she wouldn't be able to find someone. Tsuki was surprised at Itachi and Ayame's secret, but decided if he could trust one Uchiha it was Itachi. It still didn't prevent him from taking Itachi to the side before giving him the talk. Let it be known this was one of the rare moments Itachi's face showed fear and dread. Before Sasuke could even retort, Itachi's chakra levels skyrocketed. His red Susanoo easily surpassed Sasuke's, forming a full-out complete body. Sasuke started to become angry again. He thought he could finally beat his brother, only to find that the gap between them was even larger. As if to spite him, Itachi's Susanoo held up its right hand. A familiar swirl started to gather, and soon, a Rasengan was formed. "That's the Dobi's technique," gaped Sasuke. Itachi just smirked. During his time with Naruto, Naruto taught him the Rasengan while Itachi taught him almost everything else, and even saw him as another little brother. When Yusuke had first met them all, he was especially impressed with Itachi and told him that he could actually do well in the West, as part of the weaker group. Itachi didn't know if that was a compliment or an insult but took it with gratitude. "Part of it. Let me show you something I created," said Itachi. He pointed his eye towards his Rasengan and added Amaterasu on it. Soon, the spiraling ball gained all the property of the fire while maintaining its shape. Kaden. Illuminating spiral ball, original move and I'm not putting it in Japanese, don't know how it would work. Sasuke quickly backed up and pumped as much chakra into his Susanoo. His humanoid Susanoo, second level, could be seen to have bits of armor on it, but not enough to call it the third form. Itachi threw his jutsu at Sasuke. It went right through it. Luckily, Itachi decided to throw it a bit up, to make sure it didn't hit Sasuke's actual body. The backlash from the destruction of his Susanoo made Sasuke caused him to be collapse and barely conscious. Itachi Uchiha was declared the winner. However, Itachi raised his hand to correct the referee. "It's no longer Uchiha. My brother is right, I no longer wish to be seen as one. From now on, I will be called Shinka." Translate. New Flame. Don't go technical with me, I had a really hard time trying to come up with a Japanese name that meant that. "Very well," stated Eric, who was the referee for this match. Itachi Shinka wins. Most of the Easterners could only feel despair. Not one of them had made it to the semifinals at all. Sasuke only made it to the quarterfinals due to the luck of the draw, and nobody really liked him. They didn't care who won, as it would be someone from the West. As the tournament drew to a close, Yusuke was the one who won. As they all departed back to their respective abodes, Mifune asked Han, who was the closest to them, to pass a message to the emperor. Han was surprised that someone from the east would actually speak so politely towards him but chalked it up as part of the samurai code. Mifune was still interested in having some of the swordsmen come over to Tetsu someday and trade knowledge of cultures. Han nodded and had the message passed to the emperor. As they walked back, Sasuke decided Konoha had outgrown its use. Oto was going to be his new destination, and someday, he would be back for revenge. Now to plan how to get there. Hana was harassed by her village to give up information, but she had her lips tight. She didn't want to lose her chance of having Sesshomaru's kids. Soon, Sakura was screeching for an audience with the emperor, stating that he should be honored and humbled that Konoha, or more likely Sasuke, wanted a meeting with him. She also screeched about Naruto until one of the Brotherhood members slapped a silencing seal on her and knocked her out, stating she was causing a disturbance. Nobody really blamed him for that. When they arrived back at their abodes, they started to pack up. Tomorrow, they would leave, and begin fighting each other again. Tsunade, however, wasn't going to give up so easily. She went to one of the Brotherhood members and politely requested a meeting with the Emperor, and a private one with Naruto. The man nodded in reply before disappearing into the shadows. Tsutomu was upset. Though he got rid of those two demons along with Kuretsuchi when he sold the demons to Akatsuki. They were a threat to his power. Now, he knew they had survived, and what was worst was that they were living in the West. Well, not any longer. Tsutomu would make demands to have them come back or war would be declared. He had no idea how much trouble that would cause for him. A was doing with his brother B, who was yelling and saying he wanted to hang out with the Jinchuriki Corps. It was only after several minutes of rapping, complaining, a promise to come back, and with Yugito promising him she would bring him back, did it allow him. It didn't stop him from performing a headlock on B, though. Orochimaru was fuming. As soon as they came back, the Brotherhood members grabbed Karen and disappeared. When asked why, they stated that she was an Uzumaki, and thus belonged to where her clan was. They also warned Orochimaru that he would lose someone for having Zetsu trespass, and they chose Karen. Orochimaru wished he could have given that girl a cursed seal or some sort of spying equipment, but it was too late. Orochimaru wondered how he would report this back to Pain. With Zetsu dead, all the fighter lost, Itachi was alive, and possibly Kisame. Everyone went to sleep, as it was they had one more day for them before they would take an airship back. Morning came fast, and Tetsu already hammered out an agreement with the emperor. After dismissing Mifune, the Iwa congregation come next. Tsutomu proclaimed that Han, Roshi, and Kuretsuchi were traitors of Iwa and should be returned to them or war would be declared. They planned to have a fixed trial and kill Kuretsuchi while giving Han and Roshi to Akatsuki. They were promptly thrown out the door for such a ridiculous request. Odo wasn't given an audience due to the fact Iwa screwed up, and they were allies. Soon, it was finally Konoha's turn to have an audience with the emperor. Tsunade was nervous as she wanted to see Naruto again, along with a few of them. Hiyashi desperately wanted to see his children, and Asuma just wanted to make sure his nephew was alive. The darker side of the group, including Homura, Sasuke, and Sakura, plotted out how to get revenge or kill Naruto, Itachi, etc. whatever evil plan. Welcoming Konoha's party, with Hokage Senju Tsunade in the lead. The grand doors of the palace opened, and soon they were allowed to see all the riches and glory of what the imperial palace had. They were ushered into the throne room, where the emperor sat on his throne, his face and head still covered, with his consort by his side. Several other imposing figures were also standing near the emperor. 6 of them had masks, standing near the exits. 4 other figures were near the emperor, acting as advisors. They were Oki, Grand General of the Emperor's Army, Ezio Auditore, Grand Master of the Brotherhood, Yusuke Urameshi, Personal Advisor, and Ozpin, Head of Civilian Affairs. Roy Mustang of Alchemy United would have shown up, but he was currently busy with his wife Riza, as she was about to give birth soon. It's showtime, thought Naruto as he clenched his hands. Hinata saw his nervousness, and held his hands in hers, slowly relieving the tension. It was time.